So just say everything I was there. Everything we're saying. So in terms of audio quality, would they be able to hear?
I'm going to be back here.
All right, everyone. So anyone who's out in the lobby, this is now your time. Come on in, everyone. Join the party. And would someone mind actually, in a few minutes, we're going to be closing those doors. So come on in and have a seat. We're actually going to be starting our afternoon session with a meditation. So you can kind of start getting in meditation mode here. Back straight, flips around with your seat a little. So we're going to be closing these doors perfectly. So okay, so we're very lucky to have with us Robert Thomas, who is a longtime experienced meditator, ordained Zen priest with the San Francisco Zen Center. Thank you very much, Robert.
As Mikey said, my spiritual tradition is Zen Buddhism. So I hope it's okay.
What's that?
There you go.
Okay, good. Thank you. I hope it's okay with you if my take on meditation is Zen flavored. A Zen master once said, to be ready to accept everything as it comes, moment after moment, is the Buddha's activity. To be ready to accept everything as it comes, moment after moment, is the Buddha's activity. Another way to think about this is that to be ready to accept everything as it comes, moment after moment, is the awakened mind. The mind of Buddha. To be ready to accept everything. So then I know that all of you come here today with a wish and a desire and a hope to learn and grow and develop as human beings, to offer to share, to participate in an important conversation together. And so to support us all, to do that in a way that deeply benefits, and deeply and widely benefits the world, I would like to encourage us all now to make ourselves ready. As ready as possible to meet, engage with everything as it comes. And so in order to do that, and express some sense of the true spirit of transforming and transformation, not just for ourselves, but for all beings, I'm going to offer a simple practice that can help make us ready in the mind, body, spirit. And that's ready to receive, meet everything as it comes with self-awareness, with kindness, compassion, gratitude, wisdom. Of course, we all know that the truth is, and I think the Buddha might have said this, the truth is that everything is always transforming all the time. Everything is always changing all the time. We don't have to do it. We don't have to do anything to make that happen. And even in the next moment, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how things are going to change, transform, whether it's between us, beyond us, or within us. But we can make ourselves ready to receive that, to notice it, to be there, to not miss it as it's happening. So that's what I would like to encourage us all today to do, to not miss every moment. So this practice is about receiving with our entire body. And let's start by, as Mikey said, just making yourself comfortable in your chairs and planting your feet firmly on the ground. Notice your feet. Notice how your feet are connecting to the floor. Have a sense of energy moving downward through your feet, connecting to the earth. Feel the gravity of your body grounding down to the earth. And you can close your eyes while you do this, or you can keep your eyes open. There's no need to watch me. If your eyes are open, you can just soften your gaze. Soften your gaze down in front of you. I just heard somebody take a deep breath, and actually I think that's a really good idea. Why don't everybody just take a deep breath right now? And just take as deep a breath as it feels right for you right now. And as you breathe in and breathe out, and just let go and feel yourself as a human being here today on this earth, connecting to the earth. Notice where you're contacting the surfaces of your chair. And if you'd like, you can even come to the front edge of your chair a little bit and away from the back of the chair. And adjust your sitting posture so that you're actually sitting upright, with your spine upright. That's optional. So while maintaining this connection with the earth, with this sense of the energy going down into the earth, through your legs, through your feet, I'd like you to gently start lifting up and lengthening through the front part of your body. Allow your torso to become long and tall through the sides of your body, opening and lengthening upward. From that stable connectedness to the earth, lengthening upward. Allow your shoulders and arms to relax. Softening. And slowly bring your head over your shoulders so that your ears are in alignment with your shoulders. The opposite of what's happening when you look at your computer. So bring your head over your shoulders with your shoulders relaxed, and then lift gently up through the crown of your head. Connecting yourself to the sky above. Without adding anything extra now. Just simply notice what this feels like. Notice what this feels like to be in your body. Receive it. Now allow your awareness to drift downward, out of your thinking mind and into your torso. Sense what it feels like to be in your torso. Notice any sensations in your body. Find your breath. Sense what it feels like to be with your breath. Notice how on the inhale, the abdomen and ribcage expands. And on the exhale, there's a slight contraction, relaxation, and letting go. Give yourself full permission right now to do nothing. Give yourself full permission right now to not try to make anything in particular happen. Just receive what's happening. Simply be the experience of your breath, being in your body, being alive. From this grounded sense of receiving, listening, and feeling with the body, I would like to invite you to take a step backward and expand your awareness to notice that there is space all around you. And that you too are just like that, space. Open, boundless, unhindered space. And allow yourself to move outward as you wish into this space and feel yourself getting larger, extending out into the space around you. Notice what it feels like to receive the experience of yourself as open space. Notice what it feels like when you allow everything to come into and flow through and out of this open space. In Zen, when we rest in this space, in this moment, we call it not knowing. This not knowing is a time and place of great possibility, creativity, transformation. Letting go of our usual preoccupations and self-centered concerns, even for just a moment, we open to a fuller sense of ourselves, a fuller sense of possibility and capacity to meet and engage with each moment as it comes, moment after moment. To be ready to accept everything as it comes. This is the practice that I wanted to share with you today. I'll end by saying that the opportunity for each of us is to extend this grounded, spacious, flowing, changing, transforming, opening, awakening sense of ourselves into every moment of our day, moment after moment. And the opportunity is also to see that, to see how everything changes when we do that, how everything is different when we do that. So lastly, may we enjoy our time together here. May we all be ready as much as possible to experience fully, completely each moment, its full potential for our personal awakening and transformation. May we support each other, help each other, and encourage each other to do our work and live our lives together for the benefit of all beings. Thank you very much.
Hi, how's everybody doing today? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we are the co-organizers of this conference. I'm Nicole Bradford.
And I'm Mikey Siegel.
It really warms my heart to see all of you guys there. We've been wanting to create this conference for you so much. So I just really wanted to express my gratitude for you being here and this being here. So this is awesome. I have some logistical things to cover with you guys, just so that you know. So we just finished the pre-summit, the pre-conference, and we're starting the official welcome for the conference, and the plenary will be going until 6:30. We're going to have a break at 4:20, and just a couple of questions to ask you guys, or things to ask you guys. One, we're going to have an unconference tomorrow, but we really need you to put the unconference topics on the table outside, because they'll be selected tonight. And then the second thing is, if you participated in this morning's session, if you would please put the questions on the yellow stickies on the wall, and please don't forget to do that so that we can capture all of the great conversation that you had this morning and the questions.
I would add one thing, and that is I'd just like to wish a happy birthday to someone that I've been spending birthdays with for 21 years now. She's in the front row here, and I appreciate her coming out for this event. So Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Karen.
We'll wait for our slides here. I think we're moving on to the next thing. No love from the remote here, guys. Tell you what, if I just say change, how about that? We can just take it as an instructive thing. There we go. Awesome. Yep. So welcome to the conference. Transformative technology is something that we've been really trying to coalesce people around for nearly 10 years now. So we're incredibly excited to see you all here in one room. There have been so many initiatives all around the world over that period of time. We have people here from, Korea, and Asia, and Europe, and of course, all across America and Canada, and it's just so wonderful to see you all. So we're so grateful. We thought what we do first is really try to define what we mean when we say transformative technology. This is something that if you're in the transformative technology area, you've probably been involved in these discussions. It's why we wanted to start off this particular conference this morning with a workshop around those types of ideas, because this is such a broad space and it's so inclusive. And one of the things that we really want to honor here at the opening of this conference is just how many people's shoulders we stand on over the course of human history. So if you look at this first slide and you think back to what transformational technologies were once upon a time, these were cutting-edge technologies. You think about people dancing around a fire and all of the rhythms in their own body, or being on the outside of the ring of people dancing around, right, and having the fire flick through at a certain rate, and very much doing brainwave entrainment on them, right? So in the middle, there's the little tingsha bells that people ring together, there's little symbols, right? Well, if you think about that, if you've ever experimented with those, usually the lanyard is such that you can cling them together, and then you can hold one to each ear, and there's a differential tone. There's a binaural beat, often at the alpha frequency. Imagine how bleeding edge technology that was back in the day, right? It's just absolutely incredible. So all of us in this room are part of this human exploration for more. And it's been going on for, I think, as long as there's been a humanity. We've just been trying and searching and pushing and more deeply exploring inside of all of our beings and inside of really what it is even to be human, to try to see how far we can push it. So a little bit of a nod to the past to begin with. Great, this is working now, guys. Next one. Well, let's come forward a little bit. Let's come forward into the modern era, where you have the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s. This was transformative technology. And it looks really old, right? It looks like your dad or your grandpa's stereo or something, right? It's got all these crazy knobs, and it looks like something that, we might see at MIT, for instance, back when Mikey was at the Media Lab, and people were loading stuff into these, crazy contraptions, and they're cutting the holes, and they're putting the knobs on, and all of that. That's really what this space looked like for a really long time. But one thing that's important to remember is that there was a tremendous amount of effort, and there was a tremendous amount of trials, and there was a tremendous amount of science that went into a lot of those devices, although they look very, very, very primitive to us, perhaps today. They were actually incredibly advanced. Think about the leap from dancing around the fire to putting some sort of alpha brain stimulator on your head, or listening to, modern generated tones, or the flashing lights, or whatever. No longer did it take a whole bunch of people to induce some sort of experience. Now you can basically do it in the privacy of your own home, as long as you have a plug and some batteries, and, one of these amazing devices. So we also want to give a nod, and there are people in this room who participated in that movement. There are people in this room who made some of the things that are actually on that slide. which I think is absolutely amazing. So a tremendous nod to you and a tremendous amount of gratitude and a debt really that we all owe you. And right now, we're going to need it to stop working again, so if you could change to the next slide. Thank you. This is where we're at. So if the last round of technology was version 1.0, we're basically at version 2.0. Looks a lot better. It's got a lot better design. A lot of the internal stuff is actually not all that different than what went before it. And a number of these devices are people who are actually exhibiting and speaking in this space, or they're people who are sitting around you out in the audience today. So this is really the state-of-the-art, cutting-edge way that technology looks today. And what we think is that we're on a powerful cusp, moving towards the next generation of this technology, which you can change to the next slide. And that is a much more flowy, integrative experience, right? So instead of having these various devices that are reading different types of biosignals and things like that, they're going to be probably embedded around the mask. So if you think about, this is an Oculus Rift, if you think about Palmer Luckey and his designs for this, 2-3 generations down the road, it's not hard to imagine those having all sorts of these sensors built in, being able to detect GSR, being able to detect temperature, eye movement, pupil dilation, the whole bit. All of these things that in the previous slide, they're there right now. You can go buy them, play with them, experiment with them, do all kinds of stuff with them. But they're going to be in this beautifully designed package moving forward. And we're coming to a point where all of the amazing visuals, all of the tremendous video game technology and the powerful, transformative people in video games, people like Genova Chen at that game company using powerful mythological storytelling to really change people's lives, to give feedback on these powerful changes that are going on in someone's life, to all of the incredible work that's being done in virtual reality. So you combine the mythical storytelling with the virtual reality, with all of the biosensing, and you have a transformative experience on the level of nothing we've ever seen before. And at least in the human race, who knows what else is out there, right? Or maybe out there, it's a big universe. But for all of us, this is a brand new thing. And it's those of us in this room, really, who have the opportunity to participate in the creation of this. It's like being around in the 70s when electronic music was new and being able to invent an entirely new form of music. We're really the ones that get to experiment with what this entirely new form, this converged form of these transformative technologies looks like. So we're so excited to have you here, and we're so grateful to have you here. All of you are world changers. If you could see the list, I was looking down the list of the attendees last night, and it's just such a remarkable group that's assembled for this. We hope that we can find each other and really sort of move ahead. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mikey.
And so this is where we've arrived, leaving off from where Jeffrey left. At the very first Transformative Technology Conference, the nexus point for everything that Jeffrey just laid out and so much more. And Jeffrey laid out beautifully this history. So there is this long-standing tradition, this knowledge base, these existing devices and ideas. But at the same time, it feels very new. It feels really special. There's been these consciousness hacking meetups in this consciousness hacking community that I've been helping to organize, and a lot of you have taken part in that. And the feeling in those meetups, culminating and increasing over the last 2 years, really, this feels like an amplification of that. And that is this energy, this excitement, this passion, this deep interest. I had the pleasure of witnessing this morning the pre-conference summit. And to be honest, it actually brought tears to my eyes on multiple occasions. To be able to see the depth, the honesty, the authenticity, the deep passion and interest that people had in exploring what is this? what is transformative technology? Because there really is this sense that there is history, but we are also on a new cusp. Please move to the next slide. And this new cusp, this new capability is coming from this incredible diversity. I feel one of the main themes that's happening here is about bridging. It's about bringing diversity together and creating something stronger than any one of those parts could be by itself. And you see that in the diversity of the people that are here, the diversity of the speakers, but really, this is about all of you. And I guarantee you in this audience, we have everything from scientists to engineers, doctors and lawyers, all the way to artists, musicians, healers, meditation teachers. And what do we all have in common? I think one of the things that we all have in common is this deep, driving interest in developing new tools for the elevation and the evolution of the human experience, creating new technologies for the welfare of humanity. And for that interest, every single background, every single discipline can be applied. And so that's why we're here, and that's why there's so much passion. So thank you all for being here. It's truly our pleasure.
So I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Adam Ghazali. 10 years ago, Adam founded a cognitive neuroscience research lab at UCSF. The lab focuses on neural mechanisms of memory, attention, and perception, and how they change with childhood development, disease, and therapeutic interventions. He's been hacking consciousness since before it was cool. As a medical doctor with a PhD in neuroscience, Adam brings a lifetime of experience to the conference. His work on advanced neurofeedback in gaming made the cover of Nature and led him to develop a video game with Jack Kornfield. Please welcome me in welcoming Dr. Adam Ghazali.
Thank you very much. All right, can you hear me? No. He's on the hand. All right. And slides. Wait for that to happen. We'll talk about transformative technologies. We use some very, established technologies to kick us off. Well, while we wait for slides to get up, I just want to say that I just want to say I'm really excited to be here. I know a lot of you, and there's a lot of you in this room that I do not know yet. We're a lab located right down the road. So I'm at UCSF at the Mission Bay campus. I'm a neuroscientist and a neurologist. And we are trying to pioneer a lot of the things that people in this room have been thinking about for a long time and are approaching from their own perspective. It's really exciting to come about it through the world of neurology, where we have struggled for a long time with developing the tools and approaches to improve how the mind functions. And now we have this really unique opportunity to use all the amazing technology that we're seeing emerge to really help improve the mind. So I'm just getting tired of talking. Do that.
Another big challenge. All right, so I guess I'll just start talking. How are we doing over there in slides? Am I plugged in? We did do a tech check. That was good. I got here early during lunch. I think we'll get it up. And I'll just wait a minute while we do that. If not, we'll just I'll just sing or dance, entertain you in some transformative way, reach deep down, stand up. It's not my fault. Do it to self. Do not do operating system upgrades right before giving it time. It wasn't right before, it was yesterday. All right, let me just get into it and we'll just jump in. We don't need slides. Well, transformative thinkers here. So here we go. I'm just going to go for it. I mean, I have cool slides, but whatever. You can go online. That's fine. We don't need cool slides. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was I wanted to start framing this from the perspective of the technology that we currently have in front of us. And we are really living in extraordinary times, right? We know over the last several decades, we have witnessed an explosion of both the accessibility and diversity of information technology. And I think what we all appreciate is that we're really poised right now at this phase shift where we have the emergence of consumer-level virtual reality, augmented reality, motion capture, physiological devices, and artificial intelligence. And that's really the promise that I think probably brings everyone here in this room together, is how can that new technology really play a role, not just targeted at entertainment and communication, although that's very valuable, but in really improving the quality of our lives. And that's something that has really captured the attention of my lab, and I think the people in this room as well. Let's keep going. Someone just told me neuroscience joke the other day. It's really not funny at all, so I'm not sure. All right, so let's keep going. So one thing that we've observed is that despite this technology having a positive impact on our lives, it really challenges how we interact with each other and with the world around us. We call that in our lab the distracted mind, right? So we have this sensitivity to interference. And we've been studying for a long time, why are we so sensitive to interference? And how does technology play a role in that? So we have these abilities in our brain, we turn to neuroscience, we call them cognitive control. And what these abilities do is they allow us to interact with our complex world around us based on our goals. We really look at a triad of abilities. Attention, right? So our ability to focus our resources on things that are relevant to us and sustain it over time. Working memory, our ability to hold information in mind and manipulate it in real time. And then what we call goal management. So that's the ability to have move between tasks and to multitask. We know that despite how amazing these abilities are, they have very distinct limitations. As a matter of fact, they have not evolved very much, even if you compare them to some of our primitive ancestors. So,
although we can focus our attention, we can't really distribute it broadly by throwing a net out into the world. You really have to make decisions.
Working memory has a very distinct capacity, right? So for things like digits, it's 7, and as you get more complex, it gets less. For a face, you could really only remember a single item. And then our ability to task switch and multitask is also very limited, right? As a matter of fact, in our brains, we don't really multitask, and many of you are probably familiar with this. If we use our attention, then we have to move between tasks and you switch networks.
So we have these very sort of fundamental, distinct limitations in our cognitive abilities. And then along comes goals. And I view goals as being the pinnacle of human brain evolution. The fact that we can have complex, time-related goals in how we interact with the world around us is truly, I think, the most human aspect of how our brains work. We have these goals come along, and they essentially collide head first with these fundamental limitations in how we process information. And that's really the crux of the issue. That's where I feel the conflict is. Right? We have the goals that are just much higher level than you could really enact with those abilities. So technology has not created this conflict. What it has done is it's exacerbated it. because of the accessibility of information to us and this increasing desire to engage in it as frequently as possible.
So I look at that as the challenge. How do we correct that challenge? Now, there's lots of ways, right? You can correct it through your behavior, where you just limit your interactions with technology and try to decrease distraction and not multitask as much. But what we've been working on in our lab for, I guess, around 8 years now, is to develop new approaches to improve the strengths of our brain and improve our cognitive control abilities. Now, the goal is not so that you can text and drive easily, right? That's not really what we're shooting for. But there are many populations, clinical populations with neurological and psychiatric disease that have deficits in these cognitive control abilities. And it really is across the board. ADHD, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, Alzheimer's disease, anxiety, depression. There are many, many people suffering from limitations in cognitive control. And even if you don't have a limitation in your brain in cognitive control, if you have a better ability to engage dynamically with your environment, which is only getting more complicated, we think that that will help you live a better life and a higher quality life. It's not the total answer, but what we want to do is figure out how do we improve cognitive control abilities. So what we're trying to do is flip this whole story around. Instead of thinking about technology as the source of this conflict or exacerbating the conflict, can we use it as a solution to help improve our minds? So that's what we're working on in the lab. So we go through this process of creating what we call closed loop systems. So you're probably familiar with this, and the engineers in the audience are certainly familiar with it. What a closed loop is that you intervene in some way, you record the impact of it, hopefully with as short a time as possible, and then you use that information to feedback and update the intervention. And you do this in real time. And this is a tremendously powerful way to change any system, whether it be a physical or biological system. So what we do is we create a closed loop between our brains and video games. So around 2008, I reached out to friends of mine that worked at George Lucas's game company, LucasArts, and I asked if they would help me develop a video game that I designed, and they would develop it with us, and obviously make it a lot better using their skill sets. And the idea was to challenge older adults on one of their cognitive control abilities that we know they're limited on, which is multitasking. And our hypothesis was that since all the cognitive control abilities that I described to you have an underlying mechanistic basis that's overlapping, if we improved one, we would see benefits in other abilities. And so we built that game. We called that game NeuroRacer. It took us a year to build it. And we created it in this closed loop fashion. So what happens is as you play the game, in real time, the game is detecting your performance and then scaling the difficulty of the game challenge appropriate to you in that moment. And that's sort of like a personal trainer. Every moment of gameplay, it's advancing the challenge. If it's going too far, it backs off. Then we also give feedback in real time so that you know how you're doing and also you're motivated to play the game. So what we did is we actually had a collaboration with Apple at the time. We distributed laptops around the Bay Area to older adults, 60 to 80-year-olds, healthy, no Alzheimer's disease, no dementia. We had them play the game for 12 hours over the course of a month. So 1 hour a day, 3 days a week for 4 weeks. They played the game, and then they came back into the lab. And before and after, we did neural recordings with EEG during gameplay, and we also did a whole battery of cognitive tests. And what we were looking for is to see if that hypothesis was well-founded. And we found that that was true. The older adults that were really challenging their ability to multitask on the game not only showed an improvement in their ability to multitask, that actually exceeded the level of 20-year-olds who played the game for a single visit, which was amazing. We could also see neurally what happened, and that the prefrontal cortex, which is really the seat of cognitive control, and its networks with the rest of the brain improved, also reaching a level of 20-year-olds. What was most exciting was that we found that we could improve their working memory ability and their sustained attention, which is also deficient in healthy older adults. So that was a very exciting moment, because we were able to show that we could use these closed loop mechanisms to challenge the brain in such a way and to push on it and to harness the natural plasticity that our brains have to improve other abilities that were not directly targeted by the gameplay. So that was a real transformational moment in our lab. We had that question then, do we keep going along this route or to return to our roots and do more traditional cognitive neuroscience? And you can probably tell them, speaking to you here today, that we made the decision, to take the red pill. I can't remember which one. But we took that pill, and so what we've been doing now is trying to really move this whole field to the next level by not just thinking about video games as the be-all and end-all, but that the video games are the core. And the reason that they're the core is because they activate brain networks in a very selective way. This is something that we have never been successful at doing with a small molecule, right? So the mainstay of improving cognition right now, if you're a young person with ADHD, an older person with cognitive impairment, we give you a pill. And these pills act very broadly across neurotransmitter systems. But what they do not do is target the underlying computational unit of the brain, which is the neural network. With the video game, we get to do that because the brain responds to experience selectively. So we could use the video games as an activation of a network, use the closed loop mechanics of feedback and adaptivity to push a person and push on those mechanisms in a very highly motivated way. And then on top of that, we can bring on other technology to try to push it to the next level and boost those effects. So what that other technology is, and this is where there'd be a really beautiful slide up here, you have to believe me now. You can see it, but I'll show it to you later, hopefully, is that we are now working on technology called the glass brain, and you can actually go online, if you could do it right now, won't be insulted. And what we're doing is we're combining MRI and EEG to try to get real-time signatures of neural activity. We've worked with several groups, one at UCSD and NVIDIA, who makes GPUs, and so we use those GPUs to get very rapid processing. What we find is within 200 milliseconds, we're getting meaningful and pretty artifact-free and source-localized information from the brain. So our goal is to continue to develop video game technology and working with professionals in the industry. We take that very serious. We know, unlike not all scientists get this, but just because you're a smart scientist doesn't mean you can build great video games. And there's a world of professionals out there that are excited about using their skills to do something of positive impact. So we work with those professionals, we build these games, we bring in other technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, motion capture for physical fitness games, and physiological devices. And what we do with the neural signals is while you're playing the game, instead of the game just responding to your performance, it's essentially reading out how your brain is processing information and using that data to guide the game engine. So we think of it as a way that the brain is diagnosing in real time where you need to improve how you're processing, and then use that data to guide the adaptive and the feedback algorithms. And we think that's almost like a gamma knife, that we can focus on the weaknesses of your brain in a way that we never have before. And so what our plans are to bring all of these technologies together and create multiple closed loops acting at the same time, bringing your physiology into it, your heart rate, and your galvanic skin response, your eye movements, your body movements, your performance, your neural activity, all cycling into the game engine and then being fed back to you in a very rich way, as we're going to have in the next couple of years as virtual reality continues to advance. So that is the dream. The dream is that we will create an entire new type of digital medicine that will have an impact in people's lives at the level that we have not seen. And I'm not saying that this will necessarily cure all these diseases or even replace medications in its current form, in the form of small molecules and pharmaceuticals. But we think we can at least reduce those doses, minimize the side effects, and then use this closed loop approach that uses modern technology, sort of pivoting consumer-facing technology and reinventing it as a tool for improvement, and reach levels of enhancement and hopefully moving into quality of life that people have not seen yet. The last thing I want to tell you is that now we know that the vision is even bigger than that. It's not just for people that are suffering deficits, but we think that this could be a new approach to education, right? Our education process is really focused largely on the transfer of information content to young people, not actually building the underlying information processing systems. So we think that this will be a tool of education, wellness, and health. Thank you. Question. That was the first, I have to say. I've given almost 250 talks, and that was the only time I've done without slides. So it's fun to challenge yourself. 64 channel that we use on that, but these are the electrodes that we use to collect the neural data. So in our glass brain neurofeedback studies that we're doing in the lab right now, we use a higher density 64. We also sometimes use 128. Our goal is to get it down to a much more manageable number of channels to do for home recordings. So another thing that I didn't mention is we don't try to do things in the sort of ivory tower way of buying, only $1 million pieces of equipment that can only exist at a place like UCSF. We almost always try to use consumer-friendly devices because we do want accessibility. We want it in people's homes. We have a lot of global interest in moving this around the world. So when we do motion capture, we try to use the Connect 2. When we do virtual reality, instead of creating these caves, which are just not accessible, we use head-mounted displays. And eventually we'll have mobile EEGs, and I know there's a lot of great companies here that are working on that is producing the level of quality of data that we think we can actually use in these experiments to create these closed loops. So that's where we're going. Yep. So the question was, when are these going to be available? That is the most tortured question that I ever get. I mean, you feel tortured, when I speak to rooms of like 60 to 80-year-olds, they're like, I need this right now. So it's a very sensitive issue for me that we don't actually have these things in the public. And the reason we don't is because we're really a research lab, although we do a lot of development. And so we feel this very high burden of making sure that these things are carefully validated before we move them into people's hands, so that there's not a question of, does this work, doesn't this work? And so it takes a long time to do that at the level that everyone is satisfied, including professionals in the industry. So I can tell you one thing right now, that the game NeuroRacer that I described to you, that you so beautifully displayed on these slides, that game and the IP around it that's owned by UCSF was licensed by a company that I helped co-found called Achille. And what Achille has done is taken that game and made a way better version, because the folks from LucasArts that volunteered are now full-time working in that company. It's a mobile game that has higher levels of art, music, story, better interactivity, uses the cloud. It's just way better than we could ever do in a lab. That game you can't play either, because the company made a very unique decision to not release that as a consumer product, but rather to do a whole series of clinical trials, which have been going on for the last couple of years, to get pilot data, to approach the FDA with a plan to take this into the world as a full-out, clinically approved therapeutic tool. So the FDA last month gave the green light to go ahead, and you have to pick the outcome measures and the effect size, everything up front before you do the study. So we're just about to begin. I'm actually just an observer on this and advisor. So there's multiple sites, Harvard and Duke are involved, and others, to do a clinical trial as a therapeutic for ADHD. So we will see, and it won't take very long. Next year we'll know whether or not there is potential for doctors to pull out a prescription pad and write, iPad, for 1 month, as opposed to, in addition to the current treatments, and actually have the only alternative treatment besides pharmaceuticals for that condition. So I think it's a very exciting time, and hopefully that'll happen next year, and we'll just keep rolling it out after that. I'm over. Oh, okay. Last one, sorry. We're just off road here. No, I haven't worked on that one, but I do know about it. It is very cool. All right, I'm going to have to leave now before they took me off stage. I'll take your question. Okay. So we do that. As a matter of fact, those are some studies that we're getting ready to launch right now. So through collaborations with some of the big giants and smaller startups, including Apple, we're looking to get our games into millions of hands, to start collecting data so we could use that in the iterative process of refinement. So we won't be making claims based on that, but we think we could use crowdsourcing to develop at a much higher level. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Adam. Next, my pleasure to be introducing Tim Chang. Tim Chang is a unique leader at the intersection of venture capital and consciousness. He deeply understands the world of business, coming from a decorated career at GM, Gateway, and prominent venture firms, and is also deeply familiar with the leading edge of transformative technology. He advises the Stanford Center for Advanced Studies in Behavioral Science, the Stanford MIT V-Lab, the Silicon Valley Telecom Council, and more. He's a personal friend and a longtime supporter of consciousness hacking and a board member of the Transformative Technology Lab. Let's give a warm welcome for Tim Chang.
I'm Tim Chang with Mayfield Fund, and I'm kind of slightly terrified to give this talk, not because I don't like speaking, I do lots of talks, but this one really cuts to the heart of stuff that really kind of troubles me and inspires me all at the same time. And so if I go way off the beaten path with a little too much information, please forgive me. And this is being recorded, this will be fun, okay? All right, so clicker. With my story. So I grew up in Michigan. I was a very shy, nerdy little Asian, and always felt a little bit like an outsider because I grew up in a pretty rural place. Not a lot of racial diversity there. So my dad brings home one day this funky little device, and there we go. It is the Apple II, and the first thing I say, Dad, I want to play games, and then he says, it's 1980. There are no game companies. Chucks an AppleSoft manual at me, and then I proceed to teach myself how to program in BASIC. And so I start a long, illustrious career of playing games. And I used to obsess about these kind of games. They were RPGs, or role-playing games, and you would spend hours crafting your alternative ego, your alternative personality. If you're a fighter, you were min-maxing your strength, you probably weren't the smartest tool in the shed, but then if you're a wizard, you had higher intelligence, and you map out all these fantasy career lives. And then one day I had the insight, how can we not manage our real lives that way? And so I kind of started toying with the notion of gamification, or treating your real life like a game. And the thing that makes games work really well are statistics. You have stats and points for every action, every decision, everything you do in real time. You're getting feedback on it, and it tells you, are you advancing towards the goal or not, right? With that, I kind of fell into my next journey, which was in the world of mastering sort of physical self. And I tapped into this little group called the Quantified Self Guys. And we go to these meetups, and it was hilarious. It was basically bunch of geeky guys trying to figure out how they could be geekier than each other. They'd be strapping things on themselves, measuring, talking about all the things they would track. And it was quite interesting. It was a great way for a former engineer to think about things like fitness or exercise. And this actually inspired me to help put together a company called Basis, one of the very first wearable companies, and to this day, still pretty advanced. It does 24/7 heart rate, as well as galvanic skin temperature, ambient temperature, motion. Intel acquired them, but it was with a device like this, I always thought, this is how we're going to master our bodies. And here's the funny part about it. It turns out that mastering your body fat actually has more to do with what you eat. So there's a saying that abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym. And it turns out to be true. So I kind of started thinking about what's a kind of different way to do it. And I ended up with sort of a whitelist approach. I tried to basically every day standardize on no more than about 12 different foods. And that kind of worked. But it was more a notion of cutting things out. With that, I've been thinking a lot lately about what does a mental six-pack look like? What does a emotional six-pack? What's a spiritual six-pack look like? Does it follow the same process? Is it about purifying? Is it about focusing? Is it about cutting out the fluff, whatever that might be? And so that's sort of my latest experiment these days. The other thing that kind of took me on another journey was when I went to this place. It looks like Second Life, but in real life, and it is Burning Man. It is where you get to live out your alternate ego, your alternate persona, whether it be in tutus or furry animal onesies or whatever it happens to be, right? And you learn a lot of different states of perception and expand your viewpoints. The other thing that I kind of was inspired by was going to EDC, Electric Daisy Carnival, as I began the love affair with electronic dance music, spurred by Burning Man. And if you've ever been to EDC, this is an event that brings in 200,000 people, probably has revenues of over 150 million, production budget of 50 million. If you see the slide, these are literally 4-story tall LCD screens, July 4th caliber fireworks every 30 minutes. 50,000 people bouncing at the exact same beat, feeling the same thing right in front of Tiesto. In that moment, I think I kind of experienced the notion of ego death, or what it's like to lose yourself in a crowd of people. And that moment hit me that this is kind of like church, except instead of the preacher or the shaman, it's the DJ using newer tools of today instead of a didgeridoo or a pulpit or something else. They're setting the tempo, they're setting the tone that everybody taps into. And it was actually very powerful. And it made me realize why people go and crave these experiences, because at heart we're tribal beings. We're seeking this kind of communion through whatever technology is available today. This has had a, kind of impact on me is I've had this sort of question I've been wrestling with between science, which I've been trained in, as well as spirituality. I grew up in a very Christian religious family and never kind of make the two resolve. I was taught it's in harmony, not in conflict, and this is what has been sort of my mission lately with a lot of the things I invest in today. So here are the key trends. We have 10 billion mobile devices now by 2018, far more than the number of people in the world, multiple devices per person, each one with more computing power than the original computers that sent the Apollo mission to the moon. On top of that, computers are also going to attach to every device in your life, every refrigerator, appliance, your house, all the rooms, they will be connected to the cloud. We're going to have the Internet of Things, so to speak, which right now is this wonderful Cambrian explosion phase of sticking sensors onto everything and then connecting that shit to the cloud and see what sticks. Right? Smart toilets, nested furnaces, all sorts of things. And with that, what we're creating is this digital exhaust trail. Your life now leaves so much data behind that is a perfect data selfie of you. All the behaviors, all your interests, where you surf on the web, what you say, your word cloud in your chat threads, purchasing behavior. That is actually a better portrait of you than a biographer could write. So I have to take a step back and I always ask, why are we doing this? Why are we tracking things? Why quantify this? Where is this headed? What's the point? And the thing is, this is nothing new. Human beings, since the dawn of time, have been trying to find frameworks to explain all of this stuff. The cardinal question, why are we here? It's kind of funny because we also like to pay people money, other people, to interpret the signals for us. If you can't read the tea leaves, someone will be happy to tell you what they mean. That's the world's second oldest profession. So we've got this multi-billion dollar market of self-help. Where does it actually get us? Well, I kind of think back, and as I look back, there have been a lot of forms of technology dating back from ancient days as well. Even things like psilocybin or things found in nature are an ancient form of technology for driving self-awareness, changing perspectives. We've since learned to refine and synthesize things in much, kind of effective formats. But what blows my mind is some of the most powerful tools were discovered millennia ago and have been sort of exploring resurgence of interest. For example, with ayahuasca, a very powerful combination of DMT and MAO inhibitor found in natural vines and roots in the rainforest. I would say the same thing on smartphones. People say smartphones are destroying society. We're all living with our phones. But really, it's a tool for you. And I think it takes one. Technology can drive you apart. I want to bring you closer together, make you working. It's all about us. And so from a VC perspective, I want to share about where's the dollars, where's the money in this, and I'm hoping to inspire you with the entrepreneurs out there to jump into this field because it is the very beginning of this whole Cambrian explosion. In the 80s was the decade of bringing physical fitness awareness to masses. The 2000s are about mental fitness, and I think next we're entering the era of sort of emotional and spiritual fitness. So I kind of think one framework is this is just the natural evolution of the self-development industry, but it's technology plus old school wisdoms and teaching practices, sensors plus social networks, AI plus wisdom. Where we're headed with this, I'm a systems engineer by training, and the classic control loop is that you first observe something by sticking sensors on it. Once you can measure it, look at the data and see if you can analyze it, comprehend it, make sense out of it. Then I would write back the feedback loops into the system to try to improve or tune it. I think that's actually what's really going on here. Right now, we're in the phase of measuring everything. We've got big data, real-time analytics, we've got data exhaust. This screen shows basically a data portraiture of your entire existence. What you do, you are, you think about your interests, your messaging, your communications, etc. With that, we've got the tools now to build quantified stuff 2.0. You can quantify your entire life. You can quantify love. Yes, you can. You can look at environment, all sorts of things. It's even hackable. Algorithm attachment is strong. You can quantify your home, all the HVAC flows, where the time you spend in it, put enough microphones in the room, and you can actually record and figure out the words that your baby is learning in real time as he or she grows up. Quantified sports is already in play, quantified learning. I posit you can quantify creativity. You'll have quantified work, quantified parenting. Anything and everything can be, it will be measured. In the meantime, we've also seen a resurgence of mindfulness and meditation. To me, it almost represents potentially a modern-day replacement for what religion and church used to provide. Apps like Headspace bring meditation to the masses in a much more palatable way and remove maybe perhaps the religious overtones it used to have. Even smart drugs are now re-entering the vocabulary with body hackers like Tim Ferriss and Dave Asprey looking at nootropic stacks, the racetams, personalized microdosing driven by AI. In some ways, I'm really curious to see what happens when you combine virtual reality with that. So that's another startup idea. Somebody's going to build net trips. It's like Netflix, but for visualization. VR AR stuff is fascinating to me. Everyone thinks about gaming entertainment. I think this is going to actually enable machine-powered empathy. Instead of telling you or showing you, basically I'm saying, look, just feel it. Walk a mile in my shoes, and this is what it's going to be like. The most powerful demonstration I saw was an artist who simulated what it's like to be a schizophrenic paranoid because she was trying to understand why her sister committed suicide. Now, the dark side is, if it's so compelling, you might never take off the VR goggles. You might go fully virtual. You might go fully digital. By the way, to me, I think that might be one of the answers to Fermi's paradox. If you're a sufficiently advanced alien species, why hang around in meat space? Let's go virtual. The transformative tech movement is really meaningful to me because of the convergence of all these different areas. You've got sensor tech, you've got data tech, genomics technology, chemical technologies, neurotech, cyber tech, as we start to hack our wetware, behavior tech using gamification, behavior design, and then sort of, for lack of a better term, spirit tech. That's the work from the inside. Meditation, yoga, therapy, all those sorts of things. There's a lot of trends here, I won't read through this, but basically wearables are going all over. You're going to have hearables, seeables, ingestibles, expellables, implantables, thinkables. You're going to see those then track more and more data, and those wearables will start to not just read, but they'll be able to write back, so you'll be able to augment the system. As they get connected, we're going to have more and more kind of this movement of a collective consciousness, and you'll be able to interact with data streams, data sets from other people. Then you'll have not just body hacking, you'll have brain hacking, emotion hacking, mood hacking, all these sorts of things. These open up all sorts of business opportunities. We will enter this brave new world. You might have this rise of super-powered transhumanism, right? We could be moving toward this collective consciousness. In the process, we're all networked. That could mean the death of privacy. Could be an interesting thing too. But the fearful part is, what if it creates a new cybernetic divide? Because obviously not everybody's going to have equal access to all these different technologies. Read Ramez Nam's Nexus trilogy, wonderful series. So for entrepreneurs out there, what I would suggest is, as this landscape evolves, know your different business model playbooks and then start to remix them. Do you want to be a component maker? Do you want to be a device maker? Do you want to sell gadgets? Or do you want to bundle those gadgets with coaching services and be a device as a service player? There's all different models you can use. Here's one hint I'll give you from the Basis experiment. Don't sell devices, sell device as a service. Because ultimately, software and the services will eclipse hardware. Hardware gets commoditized naturally. At best, 1-2 year lead. Even the multiples on companies like Fitbit and GoPro are dropping by the week until they can show a recurring revenue stream through subscription services or other revenue streams they can add on. To that, I'm a big believer here that more than data, more than dashboards, coaching, concierge by both humans and AI is what people really want. It's just like that tea reading fortune teller we talked about. You need an expert system to help you interpret that data. Data by itself does not make you take action. The go-to-market channel dance, this is a fun one. I call it start with be a freak, go to makers, go to developers, give dev kits out there, see what all the people in the fringes, people go to Burning Man, see what they make. As emergent use cases pop up, productize those into direct consumer offerings. As consumers adopt, self-insured employers, businesses, enterprises, they will want to pick up on it. And then the big holy grail of all is when the insurer and payer landscape picks up on it. That's when the size of the deals even dwarf the consumer revenue streams. But the ultimate playbook of all that I would tell you about is harnessing the power of story. Storytelling is key to our existence. It's the original viral idea container. It's that idea bomb. And what's funny is story always follows the same template, the so-called Joseph Campbell hero's journey. This is fun because it applies to every story, from the Bible to Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark. It also applies to a startup because what you're trying to do is help people answer 3 burning questions. Who am I? Which character am I? What's my story? Number two, who is my tribe? Who do I belong with? What are the others out there like? And then third, do I have something unique about my story? Do I have a particular superpower? If you help people figure that out, they will pay far more than buying just content or buying a device. One way I like to explain it is that, you remember back in the day, an MP3 was worth $0, but a ringtone for your phone, that was worth $5. Why? One of them was a personal branding storytelling device. The other was content, right? And when you help people figure out their superpower, I think what you're really doing is evolving humanity overall. Everybody has a superpower. It's unique, and done right, they're all different. They don't necessarily compete with each other. Design the player journey into your products and services. You're helping people achieve mastery over something. You can even build these with loops from onboarding to habit forming to mastery. Near EOL and other gamification designers even have specific hooks and mechanics for designing engagement loops on getting people through this. The point of this ultimately, you may have heard that old phrase, if a million monkeys banged down a million typewriters for a million years, they would create all words of Shakespeare by accident. In the process, they would create every story. And that's the crux of Borges' story, The Library of Babel, amazing tale. Basically says, if you had an infinite library of identical books and basically the contents of them read on one of the books, A, and the very last one was Z, all the way through, it will contain every possible story that could be in existence, every scenario, every simulation that could be run. And to me, what's really interesting is the most beautiful success stories begin with pain. Oysters basically create these pearls that are formed by awful irritants, really powerful irritants that don't kill them, but create these beautiful kind of coping mechanisms. That's really what the purpose, I think, of running all these simulations are. From the Big Bang, creating different kind of planets with different starting conditions, creating Cambrian seed, primordial seed combinations of all the genetics, all the different parts to see all the stories that can be run. If you take this in a startup format, that's called Y Combinator. It's every possible startup. Pinterest for fine people, Groupon for cats. They all seem like they're going to be stupid on the surface, but you never know. Every startup has a purpose in this experiment that should be run, because you never know which one's going to crawl out the sea and become the next Google. So ultimately, this is storytelling meets data, right? And where we're really headed towards is mankind merges with machine. And to me, I like to say God and us, the only difference, God is perfect data. So God, you might say that my definition is really globally omniscient data. It's the collection of all stories. It's the result of every simulation run. And so really that's kind of my challenge to you is please go hack, go make, go run all the experiments, share those stories, because a collection of those stories is really our job to evolve, our species beyond just our regular wetware existence today. Thank you. I think the meetup groups that, for example, forums that TTC and TTL are doing are fantastic for that. And there's probably things you've already forgotten that I've yet to learn in that space. All the pieces come around and fit back together. The difference is the technology platforms have evolved and might help accelerate some of that. That's my hope, is that we get people who've been doing it for a long time and all the newbies together. So we have a lot to share. Yeah, let's hang out afterwards. Yeah. Yes.
So in your best estimation, how much time do we have left of this low-tech freedom until the AI takes over the collective consciousness and mind?
Good question. That's a really interesting scenario to think about. Most business plans I see today, believe it or not, are AI means blah, blah, blah. And so essentially you're taking general AIs and applying to vertical solutions. So now we've got robo-traders, AI-assisted doctors to help them with radiology chart reading. I think the next decade, it's not so much that we're going to get Skynet per se, but that we're going to have a lot of AI assisting agents. They're almost like digital concierges that help us with pattern reading. The thing I'm trying to figure out is when do actually I become part of AI? When can software model me so well that you can't tell if the other end of the chatbot is me or a simulation of me? We're not that far off, because if I were to OAuth my history of all my emails, chat messages, all my data exhaust, you could probably run an NLP analysis, know my word cloud, my most common phrases, the way I use speech, and you could probably spit it back and start to get that simulation. Ray Kurzweil is, hell-bent on achieving sort of biological immortality, but I actually think we could get digital immortality before then. So that's what I mean by kind of mankind and the AI merged together. If you will, Instagram is already your photographic memory. You're outsourcing your visualization to that. We're going to have this soon a neural prosthetic when the cloud can think for me. If it knows how I think, it can run simulations for me and basically say, hey, I analyzed all these, and based on you would pick this. So I think that's the interesting part, is to become the AI too.
Hello, surround sound. Hi, thank you again for everything. Really bold statements.
You're saying I'm not saying.
Just quickly, Instagram, if you have the control over your content, you're totally branding yourself. So it could be perhaps the wrong image that you're putting out. So, and then just another note, not so much question as much commentary. A second note, Watson has been doing turnkey, taking API product and apps and turning it into this predictive model already. So you see that, number one, are you invested in Watson? Are you involved in IBM's projects?
We're actually investing in companies that partner with Watson because they have that API system, right? So healthcare and fintech are immediate verticals for that application.
Yeah, I was blessed to see a demo last week with about 30 different companies.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, that are rated in the top 10 each day, so it's very cool. So again, I guess you just commented on future AI. So I'd like to maybe sidebar with you since it's a big audience.
Sounds good.
Cool, thank you.
Hello. Welcome to Software University.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm with Jeffrey A. Martin, is my boss, and I have two questions to ask you.
Yeah.
Then one is, I have saw that all the equipment and products showed in that room beside this. I thought that some kind of machine have effects on human brains, like to input some waves into human brains to make human calm down and focus on something we do. I think there are waves into our brain, and I think exactly there are no difference between noise and music. Music is just waves with a great principle, and the noise is just mixed up waves. So I think this kind of product may hurt human brain a little bit. I'd like to hear your opinion. And the second question is that I thought that human may have the ability to control the machine or just control the computer program using our brain waves. Do you think this is possible in the future?
Oh, again, you're talking about brainwave control of machines? Yeah, we're already there. Ramez Nav actually used a talk, I think it's online. He shows demos where there are paralyzed people who can control robotic arms, feed themselves coffee and chocolate. There are blind drivers with optical interfaces that can drive a car slowly in a parking lot, but that can drive a car without vision, natural vision. To your first point about sort of harming the brain in different ways and noise levels, it is the wild, wild west of neurohacking. Find Ariel Garten of Interaction. She's got an excellent viewpoint on this. But what I like is that the brain hacking industry is already proactively trying to self-organize itself and create safety standards. Because while I'm saying everybody go hack and create things, you want some safeguards so that we're not, potentially hurting each other. The next area that's going to apply to is CRISPR for gene editing. That's even bigger Pandora's box too. Thank you. We're out of time, but thank you guys so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Tim. Our wild ride. Thank you. Our next speaker, I have the great pleasure of introducing Nicole Bradford. She is a very close friend of mine and a close collaborator and co-creator of this conference with me. I met Nicole at Burning Man. I remember it very clearly. We were in this little tea house with Jeffrey. And the first thing I noticed about her was that she was present. This was a person that was there with you, eyes bright and wide, receiving and listening with an open heart. And the next thing I noticed about her is that she is a badass. After the fifth word out of her mouth, I realized that. And she has a really impressive background. At one point, she was head of operations for Blizzard Entertainment for all of Asia. And she has shifted gears, and she has combined these two aspects of herself, this badassness and this open-hearted presence, and channeled it into creating incredible things in this world. So, Nicole, please give it up.
Hi. So I have to tell you that I'm really nervous. And I'm nervous because we put so much heart and soul and love into making this for you and making the lab that I'm about to talk to you about reality. So I just wanted to share that with you, that I just care so much about you. So, okay. So I am a little curious. I'd like to see who's in the room. We're at a school that has a history of psychology. And so I'm wondering how many psychology people are here? Okay. And technology people? Okay, awesome. So we have a nice mix and a nice match, and that goes into what the lab is about. So let me tell you why I am here. I'm here because I believe in transformation and the power of technology to accelerate positive change. And I believe that you are here because you care that people are suffering. And also, I think you suspect that some of the same tools that we will use to stabilize those in need will be the same tools that will help us understand more about what it means to be human. I think I pushed the right button. Okay. All right. So who can tell me what this is? Does anyone know what this is?
Barn raising.
That's right. It's a barn raising. So if you lived in the U.S. in the 17th or 18th century and you needed a barn built, you put out a call and the community would come together and they would build the barn, because it's impossible for one person to build a barn alone. And people would come, I think, because they realized that by helping one another, they were helping themselves. But the thing that I find so interesting about barn raisings is just how fast they were. So today, the Amish can do in one day what it can take a group of independent contractors a month to do. The speed is so interesting. And so a barn raising happens when a community comes together and decides to be in the same place at the same time to accomplish the same goal. A goal perhaps like using technology to help eradicate unnecessary human suffering. So why is this important? We are the most medicated group of Americans in history. We now know that mind wandering is stimulated by distraction and is correlated with unhappiness, and we are more distracted than we have ever been. Modern life is stressful, entrepreneurship is stressful, poverty is stressful, and even the road from low-income status to high-income status is stressful. There's an epidemic going on today. So much so that the World Health Organization has estimated that by 2030, depression alone will be the leading disease burden in the entire world. Anxiety, depression, and stress are health challenges. As the brain goes, so goes the body. And these are the invisible triggers of illness. Together, they add up to about $500 billion in negative impact in the US alone. There is no question that there is a need for technology to support mental and emotional well-being. And technology is the only tool that can scale to reach everyone. And I think we all recognize that there is some tool that's needed to manage stress. This is reflected in the mindfulness trend. But mindfulness is only one part of a much broader solution, which is transformation. Transformation is the way that we come to terms with who and what we are. It's the way that we break free of trauma, heartbreak, loss, betrayal, death, fear, and even the very uncertainty of human existence. It's the way that we find true happiness. It's the way that we find our true selves. It's how we learn to be here, to be completely present. At its highest point, it's about discovering that the self isn't necessarily what we thought it was anyway. And so it becomes no longer necessary to defend it, violently or otherwise. Because when we become all of these things, we have the highest probability of acting skillfully. Because when the brain is hijacked, we are unable to solve the world's biggest problems. All you have to do is to look at the trauma and tragedy of the world today in order to see this. This is a Syrian refugee camp. And this photo that moves the entire world. When I see this, I become even more committed to transformative technology because there is a need, a demand, if you will, for something to bring peace to the minds of men. Collectively, we face challenges that we can only solve and opportunities that we can only capture by facing disruption calmly, by acting collaboratively, by accessing our creativity. And I would say, on a personal level, I think we all have experienced some kind of trauma or tragedy in our lives. I certainly have. We all know how it feels. It's a part of what drives my mission. Transformative technology has the potential to enable that evolution, to assist us in solving the world's problems from the inside out, which is especially interesting when you consider this case. Does anyone recognize who this is?
Roger Bannister.
Exactly. So this is Sir Roger Bannister, who on May 6, 1954, broke the 4-minute mile. This was extraordinary at the time. No one thought it could be done before he did it. But what is really amazing is that his record only lasted for 46 days before it too was broken. That's the fascinating part. This summer, I attended Singularity University. I was in the graduate studies program. And David Roberts, one of the faculty, puts it this way. He said, Bannister's accomplishment says something about us, the courage and freedom and the ability of any one of us to penetrate the barrier and bring the rest of the world along with us. So what this means is that whatever you go forth and build, you won't just help one individual. You will bring the entire world along. So what is the opportunity? We understand the relationship between the mind and meditation, the brain and the body, our daily experiences and our DNA better than we ever have before. And every year, greater insight becomes deeper, cheaper, and more democratized than ever. We also have exponential technologies like AI, big data, all of the things that Tim talked about. And though there is much we don't understand, the next several years will bring massive advances. So this is the Bridge of Sighs. It's the gateway to the Shahara village in the mountains of Yemen. This bridge was built in the early 17th century, and it was a technological feat of its time. It served as a footpath for the women to take cattle and grain to the village, and it's across a 300-foot drop. This was critical infrastructure for the people of that village. Certainly it was possible to cross without it, but the bridge meant a difference between hours and days to cover the same ground. Similarly, lasting transformative revolutions require infrastructure, research, community, funding. There needs to be a place for discussing important questions, stimulating vital research, and exploring new ground, so that we can create new markets and see demand through can't be denied awesome products. We need to build a real ecosystem so that we can build the bridges of the future, and just like the bridge of size, help everyone to cross. So before I did this, I was a senior video game executive. I operated World of Warcraft China, like Mikey said, a truly massive business. So if you think about WoW is big and WoW China, that's really big, and you get it. I was living the life in Shanghai, and I was successful by all accounts. Then I went on a Vipassana retreat. So after 10 days of meditating, I was happier than I had ever been in my life, and I was unafraid. And I also became entirely focused on understanding. I wanted to know what happened to me, like what had happened, how had that happened, that my entire worldview could change in 10 days. And then I wanted to share it with my friends, with the people that I love, because that's what you do when you find something awesome. And then, because I have a background in technology and scale, I wanted to go out and find out how we could scale that, how that feeling could be available to everyone. So I also, like Tim, grew up with a belief in science, that what can be measured can be mapped, and what can be mapped can be hacked, and what can be hacked can be scaled. And I witnessed with WOW the power of technology to create connection and community. And I thought, well, why should the mind be any different? Then when I met Dr. Jeffrey Martin, we founded the Transformative Technology Lab to serve you, the community, the researchers, the makers, the inventors, the partners in developing technologies that help people mentally, emotionally, and physically. My highest intention with this talk is for you to see the lab as yours, as a tool to help you bring your desires to help people into reality, and to join the barn raising that is happening here. So let me tell you what the lab does. The lab does 3 things to create infrastructure. 1, we do research into key areas: fundamental well-being and non-symbolic experience, biostimulation and feedback technology, augmented consciousness, interpersonal technology. In all of these areas, if we can use science to find the deep correlates of meditation, connection, self-awareness, then we can build technology that helps people access that. The second thing we do is build a central gathering point for our community by making a place for you. We want everyone to come together to stimulate trans-tech technologies. We've got an amazing board, industry and advisory board, and we have a state-of-the-art lab across the parking lot that we invite you to join. And when you join, the other thing that we do is we provide resources. So there's a list of all of or a list of many of the things that we do, but this includes experts, the number of wonderful mentors and advisors that we will have available for you. We're working on being able to provide funding, definitely go-to-market services, also study construction services, so you know how to create those studies to evaluate the efficacy of the things that you make. I mean, really is a state-of-the-art psych lab. So then the question is, what are you going to do? This lab is for you. Help build it, benefit from it, and use it to help the world. We need as many paths as humanly possible, and every single path is important because there are so many different types of people who will need so many different types of tools. But as people use what you make and those around them witness the shift, they're going to ask them, what are you doing? And demand will grow. And so the focus in this community is not on competition, but on growing the number of people who use this technology. There is a world in need out there, and there is a room full of extraordinarily intelligent and talented people in here. Go out and find the means for the eradication of suffering. There is no more noble an application for technology and science than this. So get ready, take action, join the lab, join the community, find co-founders, go out and start something. We're here, and I'm here to help you. Saturday, you're going to hear from some of the people who have already started, and they're here too because they understand the power of a barn raising. Humanity is extraordinary. We are creative, adaptive, and curious. Whatever we focus on, we accomplish, from breaking the 4-minute mile to landing a man on the moon, to deeply integrating technology in the process of transformation and human connection. Exponential technologies applied to the area of human growth and development will yield massive psychological benefits and interchange that will then free us to create the outer breakthroughs that will allow us to solve poverty, hunger, climate change, and more. The tools are within our grasp, and the moment is now. We are the ones who will see a widespread human awakening. There's a great sentiment by Larry Page from Google, which roughly states, are you working on something that will change the world? And if not, what are you doing? I'd say you are. Transformative technology will change the world, and we will change the world. Thank you. Any questions? Well, we have a sign up on our website, and we're going to start having meetings. And definitely, we'd love to show you the lab. It's across the way. And for those of you who are interested in starting companies, one of the things on the agenda is sort of a co-founder matching, and that will be one of the very first things we do, is to help you find each other and the other people who are looking to start companies. Hi. Yes. You can work with, we have several people working with us distant, and several of the Sophia students are also working with us long distance too.
It's ongoing.
It's hard to see, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm wondering if you're going to start
Hi, I'm Minda from Peak Focus.
Hi.
It was great emailing with you earlier. I'm wondering how you will work with startups that have already gotten started and with later stage startups.
You know, we can do a variety of things. One of the things that we have, one of the things that I think we really have to offer to the community is the ability to help you figure out how to structure studies. I mean, you may decide that you don't, one decision to make is whether or not you want to go for FDA approval or not. And that's a decision, a strategic decision. But even if you don't, you still want to be able to get a sense of the efficacy. And we have the expertise to help you properly structure studies so that you know for yourself exactly what your efficacy is. So that's one of the things that we can do with established companies already. So we're still working out the program. Actually, one of the reasons why we have assembled the board that we have is that we don't have all the answers. Like, we absolutely don't think that we have all the answers. And so when we invite you to join with us, it's also finding out what it is you need. And so that, I can hear from you what you need, and then I can go and try to get those resources for you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Wanda.
Hi, Wanda.
And I was wondering, are you guys interested in partnering with wellness practitioners that aren't necessarily providing technology, but want to work within technology to improve our efforts?
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure out something.
Okay, I'll hook up with you.
Is there a plan to have other labs do this without being
Do you mean sort of third-party?
have more transformative technology labs elsewhere, so that it can be replicated and not only in this environment. Replicating.
You know, I haven't gotten that far yet. But you know, I imagine if that makes sense, then that's something that we would do. Right now, I've really just been focused, and we've really just been focused on getting this one up and running and getting the resources and the equipment here. Hi.
People in third world or different countries where they might not be able to have access to technology.
Well, you know, that's a really good question. So our question was, you know, what about people who are outside of the high-income nations? And I would say a couple of things. First, you know, one of the big platforms that a lot of things will probably be delivered on and through is through the smartphone. And actually, smartphone penetration is, you know, rapidly growing throughout the world. And then the other thing is that the high-income nations is also where a lot of the funding is for the research side, because there's a great deal of research still left to be done. You know, there's a lot that we don't know. So I think, you know, one part, to answer your question, two parts. One part is that a lot of the research is being done in places like this that will then benefit people around the world, because the human being is everywhere. And then the second part is the truly scalable platforms. Those are moving into developing countries.
Okay. This is a very general question. It's just like when you go to a restaurant and there's pages of things to order because everybody likes something different. Or you go to the Starbucks and it takes you half an hour to order coffee because you like it so different than everyone else. If some of the techniques that are developed at the lab turn out to be specific and maybe even evaded the testing because the people that would have benefited from it weren't in the test, is there some kind of a concept for matching the technology with the individual at some point?
Well, you know, one of the trends we've seen, you know, not just in transformative technology, but sort of everywhere, is an increase in personalization. So there's going to be personalized medicine. There's personalization really in every aspect. So I fully expect that it will happen in transformative technology as well. I have one more question. Ethics, right?
This isn't so much a question as a thank you. Your passion and your love for this, your leadership is amazing. I think especially coming from the corporate world and investing yourself fully in this and building this is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Break. 10 minutes, we're going back at 4:30.
Look at him and see if
4:30.
only give it talk tomorrow. It's like when I just got on my computer, maybe just was playing. Could we just like mess around with it? You know, just like to ease my mind that not next, but yeah.
Jamie Wheel outside. He is needed at the podium. So, can I get a couple people who want to help to kind of rally the troops? Hey, Justin.
Like you, Jamie said, man.
All right. You're off. Is there anything we should know? Important information? The toilet's broken or... Oh, yeah. Maybe we'll do that after these kind of The videos will be available. I don't know that the PowerPoints will be available. It's true. It's a good thing to consider. What? The PowerPoints will be on the video. Yeah, PowerPoint and the video all together. Except for Adams. Yeah. It's not his first rodeo. I know the talks. Any other conference questions? When will the videos be available? I'm not sure. I think our hope would be within a couple of weeks. 2 to 3 weeks maybe after the event. You're already wanting the videos. Haven't even left the conference. Awesome. Yeah? Will they provide slides? Yeah, we're getting some requests for that, I guess. I'm happy to talk to them and see if they're open to providing the slides. We can try and post that. So keep an eye out on our Facebook page. No. Oh, James here. Welcome back, almost everyone. Up next we have a very special guest. Jamie Wheel is the Executive Director at the Flow Genome Project. Jamie and his team of scientists, athletes, and artists study the mind-body connection and its role in facilitating peak performance. Many people never know that this flow state exists, or occasionally they get a glimpse. But Jamie and his team are working to reverse engineer it and make it available to anyone at any time. Jamie has advised high-growth companies on strategy, execution, and leadership, and consults with Fortune 500 companies. Please join me in welcoming Jamie Wheel.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right, so we're going to pop it up a level. And if you guys ever remember those science experiments when you were a kid, sort of build your own crystal structure. You kind of heat the water, you add some solution, add the molecules to the solution, add it, nothing would happen, add it, nothing would happen, and you add that final grain, and then you suddenly have a crystal castle. So hopefully, this talk, this 20 minutes together, will be that final grain, because we've seen and heard some fantastic points of view today, and there's a ton of knowledge and information in this audience about why are we all here? what's the point? What's the actual transformation in this whole technology? So if you guys can play this game with me, which is, I'm going to be a lot more interesting if we are all interested. So, right, and I know it's late, it's the afternoon shift, I'm English, normally this is tea time. But truly, the number of times I'm in board meetings is like fantasizing about a couch in the hallway right around now. So thank you guys for hanging in there. Thank you guys for being inside on a beautiful day. And let's just get started. So this is the big idea in 75 words. The first is that life is better than ever, in a nutshell, and we feel worse than ever. We are the whacked out, worried well. Our lives, the standard of living we enjoy, exceed that of pharaohs and kings. Even the poorest among us are enjoying cell phones, motor transport, fruits in 4 seasons, right? Access to a variety of nutrition and diet that no one on the planet ever has had before, and yet we're miserable. Right? Gallup polls suggest that between, depending on which one you read, 70 to 93% of us are disengaged or actively disengaged at work. Now think about that, that's grim, because we're spending more time at work than we are with our own families, with the people we stood up at an altar and said, I do till death do us part. I see that person less than my coworkers, and I'm actively disengaged. It means not only am I on Facebook, Facebook's peak usage hours are between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. Suck it, employers, right? But also, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that Atlantic Monthly article that went viral in the last 6 weeks, which was the coddling of the American mind, right? It was talking about trigger warnings and just kind of how, hyper politically correct universities have become, to the place where, college professors are now leery of even just discussing anything for fear of offending someone. And you think, okay, now that's got dings to free speech and conscious expression, okay, problem. But you would think, okay, well, if nothing else, it's a really safe environment, right? That would be the intent. And that's not true either. 48% of college freshmen now are reporting acute and intense anxiety and depression. So we're in that world. We have access to everything we've ever wanted, and something's missing anyway. And it's nearly killing us. And then throw in lifestyle diseases, throw in 1 in 3 of us are obese. We in the United States spend more on diet products for our pets, right, than the 10th through 20th nations, that ranked according to GDP, spend on childhood medicine and education, right? So let's just say we're a little out of whack, okay? The next step is to say, hey, the way we've been going about trying to fix it, which is predominantly psychological. Self-help, personal growth, human development, therapy, right? All of these kinds of things has been fundamentally ineffective. And that what could be much, much more effective would be as if we flip that script and we deprioritize, we deprivilege an exclusively psychological model to finding our happy places, and we actually include bodies and brains in the mix. And the last piece, and that by the way is the moving from running ourselves as operating systems to just user interface. That kind of was the premise of the title of this talk. And the last piece is, and if you don't jump on this bandwagon, you're behind the evolutionary curve. Because the organizations that we work with, it starts with the folks that risk their lives for a living, special operations community, extreme athletes, but it's already spilling into investment banks, hedge funds, neuromarketing, lots of folks in Silicon Valley, right? Folks are jumping on this now, and it is absolutely what's next, okay? So that's answer first, just so you're never wondering what the hell I'm talking about. All right, we're gonna do this in 5 parts. Part 1. Maslow's hammer and the sorcerer's hat. So Maslow is famous for many things. Probably that pyramid, that hierarchy of needs is the one that most folks know. But he also coined this with that great expression, which is, when all you've got's a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I would propose that that's exactly where we are with our self-construct, our ego senses, right, that are actually stunningly, incredibly recent inventions. That's new technology that really we didn't have stable and distributed access to, at least in the Western world, until the French Enlightenment. Before that, the way we think of ourselves is I'm an autonomous, independent individual, I'm a skin-encapsulated ego, I can go anywhere, do anything, become anything I want, I can write my own story. Those senses really weren't online until the French Enlightenment, and proof is positive, which is, think why we know Descartes' famous cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. He said, hey, meditation, cogitation, is equivalent to existence. Right? Rousseau said we are blank slates, we are tabula rasas upon which we write the arc of our lives. It was awesome, it was revolutionary. It paved the way for, right, democracy, for civil rights, right? Everything that we're seeing in the Supreme Court rulings, right, on gay marriage come from that very same tradition, right? Self-aware, autonomous individuals having inalienable rights. We started developing our ability to think abstractly, right? We really honed our reason. We used our opposable thumbs. We built amazing shit. We wouldn't be able to have this conference about transformative technology unless we had had that awareness. But we made one critical mistake, which is we forgot to install the off switch. Right? And like Mickey and Fantasia, we put on that incredibly powerful perspective. And we used it to do all sorts of things, including our dirty dishes. But it got away from us. And so we went from the mouse pretending to be the sorcerer, right, to Woody Allen, right, neurotic, self-obsessed, unable to get out of our own way, right? And we've already identified how much that hurts and how much it's costing us, even as we practically drown in the abundance, right, that wizard's hat has created for us. So that's a pretty bleak assessment, but I wouldn't be here today if there wasn't something that we're all on the cusp of, and I think none of us would be here today if we didn't all sense that. And things are changing right now, and things are changing in such a way, and they're changing so fast, that this really does kind of get back to Arthur C. Clarke's Quick, the guy who wrote 2001, that Kubrick then turned into that classic film, is that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And what we're looking at, what's possible these days, at first can seem like magic. But there are four forces. There are four things going on right now, specifically this last decade. And their paths are crossing in a way that they haven't ever before. Nothing new under the sun, right? All these trends have been extant and observable, but they're intersecting, they're braiding together right now in ways they haven't before. And if you notice that slide says the four forces for unlocking ecstasis. And ecstasis is in italics because it's a foreign word, it's Greek, right? And it actually means, it's the original root of our word ecstasy, but our word ecstasy is kind of trampled in the mud. It has a lot of connotations and a lot of misapplications, but if you take just the strict definition, ex means out of. Stasis, stasis or self, it literally means to step out of oneself. To have something other than a monophasic, right, a singular one channel of awareness, right, into a polyphasic, multiple channels of awareness that I can operate from, that I can gain information from, that I can gain inspiration from. And that's an anthropological term. They assess cultures, are they monophasic or polyphasic, right? Most indigenous cultures are polyphasic. They accept dreams, they accept premonitions, they accept possession, they accept visitations, both demonic and divine, right? They accept a whole range of information feeds that we would typically disqualify. We would say, that's bullshit, that's made up, that's superstitious, right? So we, understandably, right, that was the whole French Enlightenment, that was the whole modern and postmodern era. Awesome, thank you, right? Let's get this down to brass tacks. But there's an opportunity for us to have a postmodern, post-rational, polyphasic culture, right, where we gain incredible access, where we don't lose our bearings, where we can strip out the mythologies and the superstitions, but keep the technologies and the data feeds. And here they are. The first one is neurobiology. It's a big part of why we're here, right? From the decade of the brain in the 90s, where they pumped millions and millions of dollars into this, we got a whole lot more information on what's going on in our bodies and brains when we experience alternate states of consciousness. And it went from mythological projections. This was the muses, right? This was God, right? This was the devil. This was something outside of myself. Into here are these structural functional relationships of my body and brain while I'm experiencing these states. And there's so much great stuff out in the halls, right? Doing exactly that. This is my brain on joy. This is my brain on fear. This is my brain on computation. Fantastic, right? The next is the technology. And, Tim was talking a little bit about this with Electric Daisy Carnival and Burning Man and things like that. But think about the archaic techniques of ecstasy. You'd get the fire, you'd get the people drumming, you'd get the people chanting. That really didn't scale beyond acoustic earshot, right? You'd have dozens, you maybe have hundreds, right? But you couldn't have thousands, and you sure as hell couldn't have hundreds of thousands of people experiencing the same thing, the same state, in the same time, in the same place. Interesting geeky sidebar, they've just done some studies on the caves of Lascaux and some of the French and Portuguese caves, right? Some of the ancient Neolithic rock art, and they've done some acoustic testing of like, why did they put the cave of beautiful rock art where they put it? And they've actually found that they consistently cited the most beautiful installations in the places of highest acoustic resonance. They literally painted their pictures to throw their parties in the subwoofers of the cave. Pretty awesome. Like some low-tech beat doctoring. So think about that, right? Think about Function 1 sound systems. Think about the exquisite, my goodness, we went to see one of our favorite bands, Emancipator, was playing at Burning Man, and a bunch of people gathered around. He turned the music up too loud, boom, crashed the generator, and 3 minutes later came back on. And this was, there were a lot of people there for a favorite and loved act. But when they turned the music back on, something was up with the power source, and there was no bass. And within 5 minutes, the crowd had just kind of drifted away to nothing. And you're like, oh my gosh, you just bass junkies. You guys are shameless, right? But think about that, right? We are absolutely able to now, right, scale transformation because of our technologies. This one's an easy one, the layup, people, pharmacology, right? We have access to the knowledge, not just the botany of desire, as Michael Pollan was talking about, where we shape plants and plants shape us. We have access to molecules of desire at this point, right? We know the neurochemistry of bliss. We don't have to treat it like a great white whale. Like maybe someday there's something more. Maybe one day I'll find out the meaning of ... right? You can find the molecule, you can ingest it, you can have that experience. And that's from Big Pharma, and that's from Basement Labs. That's from Sasha Shulgin up in Berkeley, right? All the way out and around the world to ayahuasca analogs, realizing, oh wow, there are tryptamines and neuroinhibitors everywhere. Neat, right? And now there's 3D printers where you can literally, they just approved 3-4 weeks ago, right? The first 3D printed pharmacology. We literally can pick the person we want to be and print the molecules to take us there. Pretty radical. And it sure beats the hell out of an unleavened wafer, right? And a shot at, like poorly aged grape juice as a technology of the sacred. And lastly, psychology, right? And I'm actually going to, the whole premise of this talk is let's put a bullet in psychology, but that in itself is an upgrade to our psychology, right? We will always have an interior lived experience. And so the psychology, if you think back to World War II, you've got organization men wearing the suit, kind of like our dear, emotionally repressed grandfathers, right? Who didn't have access to a broad range of emotions, right? And Mother's Little Helper, kind of compliant homemakers. There was no range that was permitted to express and explore integrated, complex, post-conventional humanity. And then hat tip to the boomers, right? Everybody who saw the final episode of Mad Men, good old Don Draper's is like walking that art for us over 7 seasons. Ends up at Esalen, right? Has his come to Jesus Gestalt moments, right? And that stretches the envelope. And then you get a little further, and then you have, on Oprah, you've got Eckhart Tolle talking about non-dual consciousness, and it's one of the largest, right, it's one of the largest workshops she ever offers. You have tens of millions of people, conventional folks, riffing on Eckhart, right? I mean, that's stretching the envelope. And now you have, the very first Google Doodle ever was Gone to Burning Man. Like, what's going on? What's going on? So the scope and the range of permissible, right, headspaces, identity constructs, relationships to self and other are massively expanded. You put all these four together, and we're looking at a powder keg. And actually, what's even more interesting is we're looking at a genie that can't be put back in the bottle. Because in the past, and we're actually, the next book that Stephen Kotler and my co-founder of the Flow Engineering Project are writing is called Stealing Fire. And it's basically talking about exactly this, the secret revolution in human possibility. And for the last 3,000 years, there's been a cat and mouse game between the priests and the Prometheans. And every time someone steals fire, every single time, the priests come and lock it down, often violently. Right? And let's not kid ourselves that this time is any different. Okay? And it's, the 20th century version we like to call spooks to kooks. There's been this cat and mouse game between the counterculture and the military industrial complex. And every time it slips out, right, I mean, Kesey found acid at the Stanford Med Center, it's put there by the CIA. Boom! Right? Blows up his graduate department, except for Larry McMurtry, right? And the rest is history. Okay? And then you get hysteric goats in the 70s. And you get the Navy going to infiltrate the counterculture to figure out the edges of human development. And then they write this Earth First Battalion saying, we can all be warriors for peace. Beautiful, inspiring. Right? But what happens to the CIA Abu Ghraib? They take one line from the Earth First Battalion manual of the 70s, which says you can use music to align and integrate large crowds. Final sentence could also be used to disrupt or dismay. That then becomes, in Abu Ghraib, the Barney and the Purple Dinosaur theme song getting blared, right, at prisoners in Iraq. Right? And that got, in the news cycle, that was right at the end of the Today Show, like after Ling Ling the panda had a new baby and get a load up, and then yuck, yuck, Barney the Purple Dinosaur, that would drive me crazy too. That was covert psyops, right? Taking the human potential movement in the 70s and turning it explicitly on its end. Right? Now you've got DARPA PhDs doing beer for data in Afghanistan, right? And then showing it, and based on Burning Man principles, coming back to Burning Man, having their buddies in DARPA commandeer a spy satellite to watch Hurricane Katrina as it rolls through New Orleans, right, while everybody's on the planet. So you're just thinking, wow, this is interesting. This is really, really interesting. SEAL Team 6, Death Group, right? You round the corner in their mine gym, they're using this to like train their super soldiers. They have float tanks designed and developed by John Lilly, who was the original crazy gangster, right? NIH researcher went way off the reservation, designed and built float tanks, started experimenting with LSD and then ketamine, right? And those became the domains of hippies and crystal-hugging Fruit Loops. Right? Now, it's training the super soldiers of the next generation. So has anybody heard the book, The Master Switch by Tim Wu, who's I think the Columbia information professor? A badass book. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. Because it says in a nutshell, he says all information technologies, from the telegraph to the radio, to film, and certainly to the internet, right, start out wildly utopian and democratic. Each one of them, we are sure, is going to turn the tide for good once and for all. And he says, in every single time, they end up hegemonic and centrally controlled. So the thesis of this talk, which I'm way off the reservation into this tangent, I'm glad we're here, is hacking these altered states with these four forces is child's play. No one should be dying wondering at this point. The question is, what do we do next and what do we do with them? And if we consider this fundamentally an information technology, right, it gets us access to more real-time data from more data feeds that we can do more with. We should expect it
to behave like all other information technologies, which means it's up to us to keep this democratic. It's up to us to ensure that this is continually used for the highest and best and doesn't get co-opted. Because I'll tell you, right? I mean, I'll tell you who's already onto this, right? Military-industrial complex, hedge funds and day traders, right? And neuromarketers looking to bend us to the will of commerce and more widgets. That's already happening. So this stand, this community, is an essential. If you guys remember that, again, Kubrick, that film Spartacus, right, with Kirk Douglas. You guys remember that from way back when? Right, and the Romans put down the rebellion, and Spartacus, and they're all nailed up on the crucifixes down the Roman way. He says, which one of you Spartacus? You guys remember what he does? They all say, I am, I am, I am. So I think that's our opportunity, right? I am Prometheus. We are all stealing fire. And if we do it, they can't catch us. So what is exactly this north of happy that we're talking about? Because it's not optimal psych. This is not about helping my existing current ego-bound self just feel better. It's not about just shoring up my insecurities or my neuroses. It's not about reaffirming my stories and my narratives. And that's beautiful, deep work. And there's tons of great and dedicated people in this room and out in the world doing it. So absolute hat tip, amen, and gratitude. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. That's not what we're doing. What we're talking about is what's north of happy, what is an entirely different domain. And fundamentally, there are a lot of different metrics, there are a lot of different frameworks for discussing altered states. The one that we've kind of settled on is kind of a mashup of some of the strongest ones, at least from our own both research and lived experience. It stacks for us, we can inhabit it, it's useful, which is the notion of STIR, the acronym STIR. So these altered states, so these are different than out-of-body experiences, these are different than basically disease states, these are different than accidental things that happen to catapult you. Wow, awesome. All right, does that include talking, like questions? 2 questions, awesome. Okay. Yeah, so I'll leave it, I'll walk us through this and I'll leave you with that. So there are 4 things that happen. First, we experience selflessness. Our inner critic goes quiet. The technical reason is transient hypermentality, that pesky but wonderful prefrontal cortex. Remember we talked about where's the off switch? This is the off switch. Right? That area of our brain shuts down and we feel like $1,000,000. And that silence is fantastic. Next is timelessness. We consistently drop out of fearful futures, painful pasts, right? Or fantastic futures or perfect past, but we come into the now, the deep now. Right? It's what Phil Zimbardo at Stanford discusses in his book, The Time Paradox. And we are here and only here. And by the way, this is the only place we get reliable data anyway. Mark Twain said, he said, I'm an old man, and I've experienced a great many terrible things, only some of which ever happened. And here now is actually a pretty good spot to be. And the neurochemistry of these altered states, the dopamine, the endorphins, the anandamide, the oxytocin, the serotonin, the norepinephrine, feel awesome. They're very potent reward and learning chemicals. And instead of feeling like we ought to, or we must, or we should, we can't not. Those are the kids sledding until they can't feel their fingers anymore. Right? It's those joyful experiences. So anybody building apps that are talking about gamifying stuff, please stop. You're building the wrong thing. We have intrinsic desires to learn and grow. These are they, help us get there. Don't slap goddamn merit badges on B.F. Skinner. And when I get that inner critic out of the way, and I drop into the present of real-time data feeds all around me, right, and I'm effortlessly engaged, what do I experience? Well, I tend to experience rich information. I perceive more, I make more lateral connections, right? I make more gestalt integrations. That's the gamma wave kind of movements. And I tend to experience information that becomes inspiration, that If I act on it, that inspiration becomes integration. And we continually get to level up. And that's kind of it. That's the whole ballgame. So we get to move from operating system, I'm very well, I'm neurotic, I'm seeking pleasure, I'm avoiding pain, I want people to validate my stories, and I just get to play the game of, how do I tune myself? How do I tune myself to get back to that place? And then I will learn what's next when I'm there. Thank you, guys. That's it. That's it. I don't need a question. I'll be around. Thank you, guys.
Hi. So our next speaker is Ms. Joseph. She's the co-founder at PayPal and at the Founders Fund. At PayPal, he was a VP of Marketing and Strategy and helped the company attract 1 million customers in its first month. At Founders Fund, he invested in talented entrepreneurs who are pursuing ambitious, challenging tasks. Luke also sees the importance of retaining authentic human connection in the digital era and helping people come into alignment with their deepest selves. It's my pleasure to welcome Luke Nosek.
Hey everybody, thank you for making it out here. I've been enjoying it so far for the last 5 minutes as I've been preparing the talk for the rest of the afternoon. So I'm Luke, and in my day job I'm a venture capitalist. It's the company started as Founders Fund, and I thought back to a question that we ask. We've been asking for entrepreneurs for many years now, which is, why did you start this company? And this is a really relevant question in our work. By the way, I'm not going to give you the answers. We're not going to give away the test answers. But it's a really relevant question for transformative technology. In our work in funding entrepreneurs, the motivation of the entrepreneur, like your motivation for why you are building a company, is extremely important for determining the trajectory of that company over time. And I just wanted to give away the answers. So like if you come across with someone and they're they tell us they're going to build a company to go to Mars. Because they want humanity interplanetary. That's one that you guys know about. That's my friend Elon Musk. That usually makes us perk up. Then if we come across someone and they say, well, it's to make money, then we're usually pretty bored. Now, what is the difference between those two things? And I want to drill into this and what it has to do with us. And why it's very important for you as you're building transform technology to figure out your own motivations and why you're doing what you're doing. So in the technology companies that we've worked with, the power of technology has been great to affect humanity. We built rockets, we funded social networks and so forth. But you guys are building technology to affect the human mind. You're going in here. This is huge. This is beyond, in terms of its impact on humanity, potentially beyond anything that's been done before. So its impact means a lot, and therefore your motivations for doing it are going to be very important for the future course of humanity. And upon reflection on this, what I urge everyone to do is to do from a couple of different directions. One is to do the philosophical search for why you're building and what you are building, what you want humanity to transform into, what you want your mind to transform into, what you want society to transform into, and then to also finish the work on yourselves. Many of you are also working in a transformative path in yourself. I've been doing that as well over time. And to really finish that work and to notice its impact on the company or the project you're building, because they can get intertwined and kind of entangled together in interesting ways. And this is where in our world in transforming technology, stuff can get very, very interesting. You know, I remember one, one company that came in, it was a brain device, and everyone's a little bit weird. They were all using, it's not one of the ones in here. Everyone's like, it's not scientifically proven. We had our chief scientist check out, they're like, the science is definitely wrong. I mean, they're doing something to the brain, right? It's not what they think it is. And they're all using it on themselves. And so this sort of freaks me out. This guy, but it made me reflect on whoa, this is what we're getting into now. Like, people are doing things, we're doing things to our minds, we don't know what they are. We have some paradigms which we can use, which we can borrow from. We can borrow from modern neuroscience, we can borrow from traditional Buddhism. But they might not apply to what we're building. They might not be very good for those models. And if we can't figure out new models that are sensible, we'll be flying blind with them. And that's quite a scary thought if it's just an individual. But if it's an entire society that we are piloting, we're the pilot in the plane and we're blind and we don't know, and they're like, hey, this is fine, it's transformative, it's great. This is how we felt a little bit about this company, which I was very inspired by some of the work they did. They were able to cure some mentally ill people that were, that they were in really, really bad places. So, we verified they were having a positive effect. But what we did not verify is that they knew what they were doing. And in the realm of, like, say if you're building something like a social network or a video game, I would say it still doesn't have to us the motivation of the entrepreneur and their philosophy, like their epistemology, their theories of the world, and even political philosophy all matters a lot to us. We're a little bit weird at times when we care about this sort of stuff, and that I care about it. But if you're doing something that's affecting the brain, I really care about it. Since we're embarking on this, many of you have already embarked on it. I have embarked on it in some ways. And since we're breaking some of the traditional paradigms, because some of you just borrow the old paradigms, and maybe that's a safe way of doing things. You borrow establishment neuroscience, which has a lot of stuff that's wrong in it, but at least maybe that can feel safe. You borrow sort of the few thousand years of work in psychology that's embedded in Buddhism, and maybe some of that's wrong or not applicable either. But it's at least some paradigms. But what I really encourage us to do, and perhaps this is collective work and not any individual's work, is to figure out the new paradigms of the mind that will be enabled by this technology itself. Because it'll give us new windows into the mind and new windows into consciousness that we did not have before we had these tools. So it'll be a journey of trying things and learning things from them. It's actually going to be a journey of research in some ways. And then the question of whether we scale up those research projects to the level that they affect millions of humans, that gets me back into that original question of what are we transforming into, and do we know what it is yet, and are we ready to go? That's a very big. That's one of the very big questions. Those are some of my thoughts and questions about transformative technology and why it's important to introspect into where we're going, and because of the incredible power it has to change us and to change the world. And I thought what I would do with the rest of the time is allow for a bit of back and forth Q&A with my host, Mikey Siegel, hopefully going a bit deeper and then opening it up to the audience, to you guys for any other questions. Thank you.
So brought up quite a few questions. I'm trying to think where to start. So one thing we talked about a little bit before is you're mentioning in this talk the importance of what one brings to the table in the process of creation. And but we also discussed a little while ago that there are quote unquote darker forces that are that are real motivational sources for a lot of people. Actually, arguably one of the most common motivational sources. So a lot of the structures, a lot of the products, a lot of the things that we value in our lives were created from a place of fear, or a place of anger, or a place of, you know, whatever it might be. How do we think about that? When is it good to have these sort of darker forces motivating you?
You know, I think that they can be very important. This is, by the way, this is live. We're still figuring this out. I'm still figuring this out in my work. But my general cut at it, going back to some memories. Okay. I can be really loud, so just tell me if the mic goes back. I got a lot of practice there with my sister, so. All right. So it can, our history building PayPal, we were, for those of you who don't, when we started it, it was illegal in all 50 states, and we didn't know that there were credit card thieves that were breaking into our website the day we started. I mean, it was quite a bit of hostile forces we were up against. So there was a daily fear about whether it would even exist or not the next day. And that fear drove us to succeed. It drove us to build a great company. And it also, in retrospect, we sold it for a lot less than it was worth. Ron and Peter and I argue about the different versions of this, but I think one of the reasons we sold is because we were just burned out. So that's what David Sachs, our COO, said at the end. It's like, look, if you just took a poll of who was all the people who wanted to sell us, the ones who were burned out, because the negative motivation burned them out. So it can be very powerful to have a negative motivation structure as an entrepreneur. But if you have a goal that spans, a decade plus, you or your team in that case, and as a part of that, you may not be able to last that long. You may be able to get to an exit. You may be able to sell your company, become multi-millionaires with you and your friends. But then you may be looking back on that and thinking about what you lost because you sprinted too quickly because of that motivation.
So this is a spin-off from that, and it's not a loaded question. I'm really curious to get your perspective on this. So I think it seems very true. I mean, it's obvious, there's evidence everywhere that you can create really valuable things in this modern context based on these motivational forces of fear and attachment and grasping and these kinds of things. But again, totally open question. Do you think that it's possible to create in a way that ultimately brings more love, more connection, more compassion, more care, more understanding into the world without coming from that place?
My best cut at it right now is you have to be there with both in some way, because that's addressing the world as it is today. You cannot ignore the darker motivations. People are going to want them. And I've used this as a catch-all word. Fear isn't bad. No, fear's great. Fear keeps you alive. But if you're running from it, that's that kind of thing. So I think you can build a great product based on fear of death or keeping your family safe, like the Tesla Model X. Like we spent like 20 minutes talking about safety at the beginning of the credit. It's a pretty safe car. It's great. You can build, you can also build something. You can equal parts of it in inspiration as well, an inspiration of making your life better and making things better. I think it's addressing both in a way that's healthy and not one or the other.
So now, getting a little more personal. So speaking of these sort of opposing forces, right? You in your life, and I know from being friends with you, you really have an admirable, a genuine, deep interest in this transformative aspect of life. And you have pursue that in a number of different ways. And at the same time, you have almost like this foot in this different world. And the two don't always mix. And you're not the only person, right? It almost seems like what this conference is taking oil and water and whirling them in a blender to actually form a real solid mixture, you know? And so from someone that really, understands that tension between the two, from your personal perspective, what is that? Where does that come from? And how is that evolving over time?
Well, I personally feel like I'm at some kind of like oil, water, or maybe even other things interface all the time. I've always had my foot in multiple different worlds. I do think it's important, and again, as with the light and the dark example, to not throw away the good parts of different cultures and paradigms and the different perspectives. So there's a lot. Even though a Silicon Valley startup that's affecting things that's not affecting the brain directly, but it is maybe affecting human experience directly and scaling to millions of people. Both sides of this thing are very, very important. Let me just try to crystallize what it is. It's this is it. It's to stay connected to as many things as possible and to not disconnect. Because this is where I have gone wrong in some of these places where I remember, one different version of the story where I was working in a company where we were working on curing aging calcium molecular. There's this whole like singularity type group, and there's like subgroup of it, which is all about uploading yourself into computers and living forever. So that was a lot of the science fiction I read and a lot of the future that I wanted back many years ago. Mine's a little nuanced now. But there was an escape in that I did not recognize at that time, which had to do probably with certain trauma that people had gone through that were into that kind of thing, where they didn't want to be in their body and maybe just wanted it chopped up into little bits and put it in a computer. Just maybe there was some kind of trauma that motivated that. But so the thing is, the motivation there was to disconnect from the world. So the pure immortality, like I'm gonna cure aging and like put myself in a computer and disconnect from this world. What I work on now is trying to push technology as far as it can go, but also stay connected to this world and to us as humans at the same time.
So with that, we're gonna open it up to the audience for some questions.
I'm gonna ask a philosophical question.
Sure.
Transformative technology is, in many cases, about abundance, about discovering abundance at our core and expressing it, so on and so forth. Money, in many situations, is an emblem of scarcity. Both are there. Both are polarities, both are dualities, however you want to call it. I'm curious just to hear your comments on your own experience with scarcity and abundance, and how that polarity informs your thinking.
Well, it's interesting, as soon as you said money, I actually thought abundance, because if capitalism is working well, it's creating incredible abundance. There's actually, you can look at both of them in both ways. You can actually, if you transform again in that way that isolates rather than connects, you can create scarcity of connection, scarcity of new ideas, scarcity of thought. I think both can happen. Actually, one other tiny piece on that though is there's scarcity sounds negative, but sometimes scarcity is true. Sometimes conservation of matter, like energy, so you use that to build things that work. If you pretend it's not the case, then your stuff won't work. So people do that with companies and their financial spreadsheets sometimes. Anyway, so next.
Hey, Luke. Hey. You mentioned that we're embarking on a journey of research to identify the new tools that will empower us as we move forward and transform. How do you identify which of those tools should be scaled and what type of efficacy must improve it? And as connected to that, how important is FDA approval?
Well, you just got loaded with more loaded with every sentence. It's like, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know. We're right at the beginning. Like it's actually up to us to figure out a lot of this stuff. So it's really, I just want to stress again that it is. It's up to us to because we're going to be here before a lot of the mainstream is to really take the time and create the new, to the extent that they may be necessary, some ideas on new paradigms of research, to the extent that they're necessary new paradigms, and to the extent that we can use the existing systems to do the research using the existing systems.
Over here.
I'll let you guys write.
Along with that last question, you just mentioned the paradigm again, and you said the importance of identifying the new paradigm of what we want to do with this technology. Have you come up with any personal answers on what that new paradigm would be?
I mean, I'm just noticing how much I've overused that word. Yeah, no, I haven't.
Would you still consider yourself plugged into the more biologically rooted elements of making research? Do you think that open source communities might have a part in solving that problem?
The aging research? Oh yeah, I've been digging into that a little bit more recently. It's actually huge. I think there's a lot more we can do with biology. We need better tools. It's the way we've been doing it so far has been producing very much.
Final question. What do you say? Sort of give a quick piece of advice to groups, projects, early startups, people that really want to enter into this space. What should they know? What should they watch out for?
Well, I'm actually just going to give really this is a very important general advice, which I wish that I had right at the beginning, and then I finally got it right. Sort of the third startup. Everything that everything is about people. If your success and what you do in the world is going to be much more determined by the people that you're surrounding yourself with and you're working with than they are about your ideas actually, which is going to, if you can find the right people and the right teams to be working with, then you'll realize your dreams. And that the hard part in there is actually in discovering yourself. Because if you haven't discovered where you fit into that, you could either end up either disconnected or trying to kind of blindly fit in to a lot of places with a square peg in a round hole. So that's the most important thing in your research or in the company you're building and the ideas you're developing is who you're spending your time developing those things. And the guide to that is it's actually kind of simple. It's the chemistry guide. If it clicks and there's chemistry and you want to stay up all night working on the thing, then it's likely that team and that is where you want to be putting your effort. If it doesn't feel like you have to make yourself do it, or like you're like forcing it, or if it's a should or something like that, it's probably wrong. It's really that simple, and it's one of the most important things. I wish I had gotten that earlier, and I would have been, doing more stuff a lot earlier.
Thank you so much.
Hello? Okay. Great. So it is my pleasure to introduce our last speaker of the day, Dr. Stuart Amaroff, Director of the Center for Consciousness Studies and Professor Emeritus at the University of Arizona. He is a thought leader at the intersection of consciousness and hard science, publishing many research papers on how we can tune the brain with external stimulation. Additionally, he has pioneered a theory on the origins of consciousness. But regardless of where it comes from, let's direct our consciousness towards welcoming Dr. Stuart Amaroff.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you all for being here. Thank the organizers, and it's a great pleasure. So, as you can see, the title of my talk is Tuning the Brain for Well-Being with Transcranial Ultrasound, TUS. Oops. That's the laser. Sorry. I zapped somebody. So well-being is a synonym for a lot of words, including flows we heard in 2 talks previously, for optimized states of consciousness. So the real question, if we're going to really do this, is what is consciousness? Now, there are many ways to approach this problem, from going clockwise: neuroscientists, roboticists, artists, physicists, psychiatrists, anesthesiologists, that kind of looks like me, meditators, and philosophers. And in Eastern philosophy, if you go back to the previous one, being is meant to imply conscious awareness. Being is everywhere. We're conscious beings in a sea of consciousness. That's Eastern philosophy. Now, I can't read this slide. Okay. In Western philosophy, or Western science, in the West, the brain, the mind has always been compared to the current information technology, going back from the Greek seal rings and wax to memory, telegraph switching circuits, the subconscious boiling up, Carl Trueman's hologram, music. I personally think the consciousness is more like music than it is a computer, but mostly computer. And that has certainly dominated things recently. So we have a bunch of neurons connected by variable synapses, which is kind of like nodes and switches in a computer. So everybody has assumed for many years that the brain is a computer, with consciousness kind of as the output. But there are problems with this. We can't really explain consciousness, for one thing, and it renders consciousness epiphenomenal. And because the activity happens too late. So it means that we're really kind of along for the ride, a helpless spectator, as T.H. Huxley said. It precludes the possibility for any non-locality. Spirituality, near-death, out-of-body experiences, the possibility of an afterlife is out the window because it's a strictly classical computer. And brain mapping. We've heard a lot in the last few years about spending billions and trillions of dollars and euros to map every neuron in the brain, every connection. Well, a few years ago, some people got smart and they said, wait, there's this worm, the C. elegans. We know every neuron, we know every synapse. We know everything about the nervous system. Let's just do that in a computer and we'll see it swim around and we'll go from there. Well, they did it, and guess what? Nothing happens. The worm just sits there, it lies there, there's no activity. Something is missing. Something is missing other than the connections at the neuron. Now, on the other hand, there's a single cell organism, one cell, no synapses, paramecium, for example, that swims around, it bounces off of obstacles, as you can see. It avoids obstacles, it avoids predators, it finds food, it finds a mate, it has sex. In fact, there's an X-rated, the only X-rated slide you're going to see today, probably, of two paramecium fused and having sex, and we don't know if they're conscious or not. But the only time they're actually absolutely still is during sex, so they may be working on their quantum coherence. Now, how do they do that? If you see, the upper left is a paramecium, the little hair-like things sticking out that are both sensors and ores with cilia, and you can see the structures, made of structures called microtubules. And there are 9 doublets or triplets of these microtubules. They stick out, and they both sense and move. And I got obsessed with microtubules 40 years ago in medical school. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. Now, how the cilia bends is that these microtubules, and you can see one at the bottom, have these ATPase motor proteins that bend back and forth, thymine and kinesin. Now, why am I telling you about this? Well, it turns out that the exact same structure, the microtubule and the dynein and kinesin, work in the nervous system. So in learning, synaptic plasticity, stuff synthesized in the cell body needs to get to a synapse. Downstream has to go left, right at branching points, and it does so by being transported by these motor proteins. And the tau proteins, the red things, tell the motor proteins where to get off and where to deliver their cargo. They're kind of like the traffic signals. And tau, you might remember, is important in Alzheimer's disease. And in Alzheimer's disease, we have neurofibrillary tangles where the tau falls off and the microtubules destabilize. And in fact, Alzheimer's, now there's the amyloid plaques outside the neurons, but the pathology correlates with the neurofibrillary tangles, with the tau falling off and the microtubules disintegrating. If that happens, you get symptoms, you lose memory, you lose cognition, and that's Alzheimer's disease. Now, let's look at the brain a little bit. Here's the cortex, and there's three steps, more or less, when signals reach cortex. They go to layers at the top and bottom, and they converge on 2 other layers, and they all wind up on layer 5 pyramidal cells. So if there's one place in the brain that consciousness occurs, I'm not saying it's the only place, it's these layer 5 pyramidal cells. And the apical dendrites that go to the surface give rise to EEG, because they're only perfectly vertical ones, everything else cancels out. So EEG comes from pyramidal cell apical dendrites. Now, if you look in, and so Bing must be in pyramidal dendrites. If we look inside one, we see all these microtubules in this interesting mixed polarity. Now, they're part of the cytoskeleton. You would think for structure, you wouldn't want to break them in little pieces, but so this is lousy for structural support, but really good for information processing. And so I think Bing is happening in the microtubules and in the pyramidal cells. So let's look at microtubules. As I said, in medical school in 1972, I found out about microtubules and mitosis. They were neurons. I was learning about computers. And I said, hey, they must be processing information, supporting mitosis, information processing, memory, and even consciousness. And I worked on a bunch of models with physicists like Steve Rasmussen and others in Los Alamos as microtubule automata. The idea that microtubules are the information processing devices inside the cells. They can account for not only cilia, but also consciousness in the brain. And so I published a bunch of papers showing information processing possibilities, and then hooked up with Roger Penrose to develop a quantum model that I'll tell you about very, very briefly. So let's talk about memory a second. What we know about memory is from long-term potentiation, LTP, where if you stimulate the upper neuron high frequency briefly, the lower one will stay, the synapse will stay hypersensitive for a long time. And one of the steps is calcium comes in and activates an enzyme called calcium calmodulin kinase 2, CAMK2, which latches onto microtubules. It's a beautiful snowflake-shaped molecule. When the calcium comes in, extends these kinase domains. It looks kind of like a nanotube or something really strange. But this is what's delivering memory into our cells by phosphorylating something. Well, what might it be? Well, it turns out, as we show this paper, it's quite likely that CAMK2 is encoding memory in microtubules. You see how perfectly it overlays with the microtubule lattice, the A lattice and the B lattice, shown in gray at the top. And so what probably happens in memory is that CAMK2 comes down on a microtubule, lands on it, and deposits 6 bits, up to 6 bits of information on a microtubule. And hundreds and thousands of these happen with each synaptic event. So the information capacity storage for memory for microtubules is enormous. And so and I was going around telling AI and singularity types that your 10 to the 16th operations per second, which they calculated based on neuronal bits, was way too short, and actually they need to consider the microtubules to get to 10 to the 27th operations per second. So they didn't like it very much because it was pushing their goalposts way far down. I became unpopular in AI and singularity, and remains so as far as I can tell. But I think they're way wrong. But how does that explain consciousness, emotions, feelings, being? It doesn't. And fortunately, somebody suggested I read a book by Sir Roger Penrose, which I did, and I don't have the time to go into this, but we developed a theory based on quantum computation in microtubules, and Roger developed a mechanism for consciousness. It's the only mechanism ever proposed for consciousness. It has to do with a particular type of collapse of the wave function due to he brought in general relativity, and I don't have time to go into it, but it connects quantum processes to the fine scale structure of the universe. Okay, which means that consciousness is connected to the universe, giving rise to non-locality, the possibility of spirituality, and each collapse, each choice, each perception is influenced by platonic values embedded in the universe. This was a mind-blowing book when I read it, The Emperor's New Mind, and I think it's by far it's the only mechanism ever proposed, and more evidence seems to be supporting it. So on the lower right, you see how something happening in microtubules correlates in some way with quantum collapse in space-time geometry. That's a simplification with space-time geometry. Okay, so you can say, well, that's all well and good. Where's the evidence? Well, it turns out there is evidence. This gentleman, Anirban Bandyapati, some of you know him, took a single microtubule. He liked our theory, he said, I'm going to test it. He took a single microtubule, the red thing in the upper right, put 4 nanoelectrodes on it, because these things are really small, and it's a good insulator, but when you stimulate it with alternating current, and certain resonant frequencies, that you can see about 10 and 20 megahertz, and also in the kilohertz in the insert, and also in gigahertz, not shown here, the conductance goes way up, the resistance drops, and perhaps even superconductive if you could ignore the interface between the nanoprobe and the microtubule. So this shows that microtubules have resonances, probably quantum resonances, in megahertz, gigahertz, and kilohertz. And he also showed in a subsequent paper that if you stimulate tubulin, which assemble in microtubules, at about 2 megahertz is the sweet spot, and the microtubules grow longest. So 2 megahertz, and this is electromagnetic, but microtubules are piezoelectric, will grow fast, will assemble very quickly into long microtubules. Okay, he then went to MIT and spent a year looking for this inside active neurons. These previously had been single microtubules outside of neurons. Here he went and put these nanoprobes inside neurons and spent a year there, and they're just now writing up the paper. And the bottom line is that if you look on the bottom, you see what he calls triplets, sets of resonances. And at the left is the very slowest, which would be EEG, and then it goes to kilohertz, megahertz, gigahertz, and terahertz. And it's kind of like a fractal frequency, and it's very much like music. I think consciousness is more like music. And the microtubules are the instruments. Georgi Bisaki, the EEG expert at NYU, says that the neuron is not a bit, it's a Stradivarius. And I think the microtubules are the strings. And they're quantum resonators. Okay. Could you play that? So I hope we hear the sound. This is from Anirban's work. It's in the online backup material. This is singing microtubules as he puts it, but the audio coming out of there. I'm going to shut up. You can see it's sweeping the frequency lower left. So that was kilohertz. So that's apparently what it sounds like inside neurons. Now this is actually taken down in the audio range, so that's not really what it sounds like, but it gives you the idea of the frequency and the beats. And we actually think that the EEG are beats of faster vibration. We have like microtubules resonating at 10.001 megahertz and 10.00 megahertz, and they interfere. They can give you 50 hertz oscillations, which can be gamma synchrony. So we think that, Roger Penrose and I think that EEG is actually a beat frequency of faster vibrations of microtubules. So consciousness EEG is coming from microtubules. Okay, so what? If you consider that brain microtubules resonate in megahertz and are responsible for consciousness in mental states, could mental and cognitive states and disorders be treated by applying megahertz vibrations to the brain, which brings us into transformational technology. Now, in electromagnetic waves, that's radio frequency. I don't really want to put radio frequency into the head. However, in mechanical, it's ultrasound. Now, we know about transcranial magnetic stimulation, we know about transcranial electrical, direct current, and alternating current, but there's also ultrasound, or sound. And ultrasound is above 20,000 hertz, so it's above audible if you're a human. Dogs can hear it up a little bit higher. Goes up to several hundred megahertz. It's quite a broad range. And when I found this out, I wondered if anybody had been putting ultrasound into the brain. We use ultrasound anesthesia for imaging all the time. And I went to Google. Well, you know that ultrasound is used to image the body, including fetuses in utero. And it can't be that bad, right? It doesn't seem to affect things too bad. It's been around for 80 or 90 years. So was anybody putting it in the brain? And sure enough, this guy, Jamie Tyler, had been doing it in animals, in rats. He had implanted electrodes in rats and gave them ultrasound, and he could control their behavior. And he could, for example, put it here and make their palm move. He could record electrophysiological effects. He got a grant to study the effects on cognitive function in pilots and so forth. And you can see lower right his first transcranial ultrasound headset, fairly primitive. He started NeuroTrack and Think people are here, and they have an electrical device, but they are also doing ultrasound. So since I wondered what it would feel like and whether we should do it. And of course, these ultrasound devices, you can see pictures of them, we've seen other pictures, and if you put them on, you immediately look sexy and beautiful. On the other hand, there's me, and I was telling my friends in anesthesia, we should try this because we had chronic pain patients in the press, and they said, we don't try it on anybody until we try it first. You got a shaved head, it was your idea. And so I did, and I actually did it myself. I put it to my right temple for about 15 seconds. I didn't feel a thing. I want to make sure the machine, I put it down, I said, well, the heck with this, I got to work. I didn't feel anything. But a minute later, I got a buzz, and I was energized. I felt really, really good for about an hour. I said, we should try it. So we did a study and published the first human study on mental states in late 2012, actually 2013 it came out in print. Now since then, we work with Think, we also work with GE, and then there's a guy, Sterling Cooley, who's making this device. He got bought out and moved to China, and we're waiting for the device. We're also using the Think, and we're using any of the ultrasound devices we can get. And we just submitted this study where, for example, we showed the waveform. The good waveform is 2 megahertz for only 30 seconds. If you do it for 10 minutes, you don't get as good an effect. So more is not better in this case. So 30 seconds is better than 10 minutes. And we also showed that 2 megahertz is better than 8 megahertz. Now that's at the temple. If you put it at the vertex, you don't get it. You get a mixed bag on mood. But people reported funny things like uncontrollable laughter, out-of-body experiences. Things like that, and it's probably because this slide didn't come up there. Here's 2 megahertz versus placebo, and with modeling we showed that the ultrasound actually penetrates through to the other side of the brain, so it gets through the brain quite well, even at fairly low intensity. So you get gamma synchrony EEG on the side that you apply it, and then this paper came out early this year on rats from Australia, and they found that ultrasound, they were using ultrasound to open the blood-brain barrier. It turns out, to get drugs across, but it turns out ultrasound alone improved the pathology in rats and also their memory function. And they said that, this should be tried in humans, it's gonna take a few years to figure it out. And we said, yo, dudes, we've been doing this for 3 years. And so we are now starting studies on Alzheimer's since we think we're resonating microtubules. Alzheimer's microtubules fall apart. We're starting studies on Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injury based on an Anirban study that 2 megahertz promotes microtubule assembly. And this study from my colleagues in India, Sadhiki Gupta, that showed that ultrasound, so the red ones get ultrasound, this is microtubules assembly in a test tube, in a cuvette, and temperature, at room temperature, they start to disassemble, but with ultrasound they stay together. And then in concussion and head injury, the microtubules are fractured, and our student Uma Rahman looked at cortical embryonic neurons, and ultrasound caused faster neurite sprouting than controls. So we're starting studies of ultrasound on Alzheimer's and traumatic brain injury, also pediatric development, ICU delirium, and so forth. So I think it's a very, very promising tool. I can't quite read my summary slide, but you can read it for me. I think it's painless, it's safe, and I'm talking about low subthermal doses. At high doses, you can cause lesions, and some people use it to destroy seizure foci or tumors. We're talking about low intensity, completely painless, below the thermal threshold, and we've already shown it can be used for mood. We're doing studies on depression, memory, Alzheimer's, and brain injury, and I think it's going to be really good in the future. So thank you much for your thank you very much. Over there. Shout it out.
Yes. So you were doing this on the brain, but microtubules are in every cell in the nervous system. So are there perhaps applications with ultrasonics in every other?
Yes, actually, ultrasound has been shown to promote regeneration of peripheral nerves. We're going to try it for peripheral neuropathy. There are microtubules in every cell. It's been shown to improve healing in ulcers, and diabetic foot ulcers, that sort of thing. If you promote microtubule activity, it's going to have a good effect. So yes, it works on peripheral nerves, and we're also trying it at the C6 acupuncture point for postoperative nausea and vomiting after anesthesia, and a few other, whatever we can think of, because it's painless and it's safe and it's available. We have these ultrasound devices all over the operating room. In anesthesia, we use them every day.
All right, everyone. That was our last speaker for the day, but we're not done. We are going to be ending with a closing meditation, a short 10-minute guided meditation from a new sort of featured celebrity meditator here. And before that, to keep you captive, sandwiched between talks and a meditation, I'm going to inject my announcements. So we have right now, after the meditation, food truck for dinner. We've got music. We've got drinks. We've got chips and salsa, hummus. And then for those of you that signed up, in this room right behind here, we've got the Muse Meditation Experience. And the exhibition is open till 9 p.m. and there are some really cool experiences in there. And if you haven't been into the maker space, which is all the way in the back, definitely check that out. There were a couple of questions about what the unconference is and what the breakout sessions are. So I wanted to give you a 1-minute overview of that. The unconference is an opportunity for anyone in this audience to propose a topic, and then we will, amongst those topics, choose our, I think, top 10 or so, and then you will break up into groups based on those topics, and you will hold discussions around those topics. And that happens tomorrow at 5 p.m. Before that is a totally new thing that we kind of invented called the curated breakout session. And that is another one of our efforts to try to be a little more interactive than your traditional conference, but still get this sort of speaker, luminary, wisdom quality in there. And so we have people that could easily be, headlining a conference, really amazing leaders in their fields, except instead of standing in front of you and speaking to you, they're actually going to be moderating discussions. And so we're going to start that with a lightning round, where you're going to hear a 2-minute spiel from each of those about 12 different speakers. And then you're going to break up into 12 different groups, and then you basically get to have a conversation with an expert in whatever field. So that's happening tomorrow at 3 p.m. And before we start our meditation, I also want to take a moment to thank Liz Lee, the president of Sophia University, and Sophia University for generously donating this space to this conference. So thank you very much. Okay.
Hi, so I'm going to introduce our person who's going to do the closing meditation. So the person who's doing our closing meditation is a dear friend of mine, Adil Kassam. And you guys may know of the work that he and his fantastic organization does. So it's called Unify. And so they did World Peace Day, the most recent World Peace Day. They've done World Water Day, Global Yoga Day, and really beautiful, beautiful global synchronization events around things that people like us care about. So meditation, yoga, peace, compassion, and it truly is an amazing organization with an extraordinary reach, probably one of the largest reaches out there for people who are interested in consciousness. And so, may I introduce Adil Kassam. You good?
Nice. Hi. Well, what a ride, huh? Like all these opportunities and probability vectors and interesting people. Yeah. So I'm a meditative explorer, I guess, for the last 20 years or something. Yeah. And as Nicole was sharing, we've been experimenting a lot with getting people to meditate at the same time. So typically for these on solstice or equinoxes, just so happens that people end up holding, or there's. Yes. Are you getting a little? Yeah. 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 Is that good? Does that work? Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah, we've just been experimenting with unification, seeing what happens when people meditate together. It's been quite an adventure, interesting adventure. So I guess we're going to experiment with a bit of a unification experiment here. And so first, before I get into it, how many people here have a regular meditation practice? How many people would say they've had a direct experience with the source of their being? Get ready, this is going to be fun. So we've been experimenting or studying as many different meditative traditions as we could get our hands on, looking for similarities, through lines, looking for what's universal, what seems to be true. What we're sensing is that, if you can look at, you can analyze what meditation is from as many different angles as possible, you begin to see that, that truth, that underlying truth. Drink from the same pool of water, whether we call it pani or lo or water, the experience is essentially the same thing. So, kind of moving or decoupling people's experiences from their description with their cultural, the cultural nuances, right? What is it like in Buddhism, or what is it like in the Vedic traditions, or in the Sufi traditions, or even in the Egyptian traditions, or Kabbalah? This mysticism thing seems to be the same thing. Human beings for generations and generations have been stumbling upon themselves and stumbling upon truth and attempting to share it with others. And so I'm going to share with you a technique, I guess, that is through line for many of the different traditions. So, okay, so I'm gonna ask you something. Can I get that chair and sit? I want to sit. I want to resonate with you guys and go through the same thing you're going through. So, I think it's maybe about 7 or 8 minutes. So, I'd recommend get comfy in your seat. And if you would allow me to posit a few words that we can resonate to, the journey that we can resonate on. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes. Allow yourself to settle into your own self, into your own body. Most of the time in our minds, we're talking, we're analyzing, deciding, interpreting. Meditation is essentially the art of listening. Not forcefully stopping, or curtailing thought, but just listening to it. Listening to thought, to ideas, and to the space between the ideas too. I just encourage you to allow yourself to listen, just to yourself. And just for now, don't judge, don't tell yourself you should be doing a different way. There's no right way to do it, actually. Well, there is, but the body and the mind, the being actually know that way. And it's what's natural to us. It's what's natural to us. If you notice the locus of your attention is somewhere around your face or behind your eyes, where we feel like we are, most of us. I'm going to show you what happens as you move the locus of that attention through the rest of your body and unify the rest of your body. The key that unlocks the door is when consciousness is placed upon the source of consciousness, on the being. I invite you to feel first the soles of your feet. Feel the skin underneath your feet. And the tips of your toes. Just going to feel the flesh, the muscles, the tendons, and the bones. And the bones inside of your feet until you can feel up to the top of your feet. Soften them and relax them. Just settle into them. If you hold your attention there, you'll notice that there's a slight buzz. It's an electric blanket or something. You begin to move your attention through your ankles, through the bones, the cartilage of your ankles. Just softening as you go up into your calves, to your shins. Moving your attention into your knees, your thighs, to your bum, all the way to your hips. You could just feel both of your legs at the same time. You notice there's a slightly different quality about how your legs feel compared to your chest, for example, or your arms. This is your guide. This is your teaching. You can begin to follow it and trust it. Actually, what happens when your attention is placed upon your body and what you think of as yourself. Is your right leg all the way through your leg? The muscles, the bones, tendons, nerves, every bit of it. All the way down to the bottom of your feet. Your left leg, and your bottoms of your feet, with your ankles, your calves, your shins, your knees, your thighs. Until you can feel both legs very fully, very completely. That your cells that are under your command, you can tell them to do whatever you want. And just soften and relax. This pleasant feeling, this relaxation, will move up through your pelvis, your hips, your brain, just soften and relax that. Up into your stomach, into all of your organs, your intestines, your liver. Just feel that in your cells. Into the stomach, into your liver. Just feel it. Your stomach, all the organs, all your abdomen. Soften and relaxing all of your cells. Into your lower back, your spine, the tip of your spine, up through each vertebrae. Lower back, rolling up through your spine. Moving forward until you can feel your lungs, softening your lungs, your chest. Moving up to the tops of your shoulders. Now cascade down through your biceps, your triceps, elbows, forearms, wrists, into your hands, right to the tips of your fingers. And just soften your hands. Notice if there's any places of density inside your body, places where it doesn't want to heal. Hold like a hair dryer up to that ice cube. Just hold your tension there and you'll notice it kind of melts. It sort of softens and melts. Moving up through your hands, wrists, forearms, elbows, biceps, triceps, shoulders. Into your neck, your shoulders and neck. If there's any tension there, just hold your tension there. Just let it go. Come back to it. Just rest. Softness, this relaxation. Now let's move it up through your neck, into your chin, into your teeth, into your tongue, the top of your mouth, your jaws. Not so much tension, there's so much tension, just hold your tension. Just let it release. And move up through your face, through your nose, soften your left eye, your right eye, into your forehead. And just descend back into your brain, your forebrain, your left brain, your right brain, your midbrain, rear brain, the entire brain. These are your cells, you're allowed to be here. Soften and relaxing. You come up through your brain, into your skull. Feel the bone of your skull. So you can feel your hair follicles. Right to the top of your head. Now feel whatever that feeling is throughout all of your body. Intensify it by 10 times. Soften into it more. If you've meditated, allow the meditation experience to take hold of your entire body. And for those of you that haven't, this is meditation. You notice you're not allow all the noise of everything outside to just be part of the background noise. Now let the waterfall cascade down through your brain, through your face, through your neck, down through your left shoulder, through your left arm, right shoulder, right arm, down through your chest, your lungs, your abdomen, all your organs, down through your pelvis, your hips, and both your left leg and right leg simultaneously, all the way down till you come to the bottoms of the feet. Now feel your entire body simultaneously, the whole body. You'll notice the locus of your attention is shifted slightly towards the center of your being. You softly relax and then surrender to it. Meditation is like listening, you're just observing. Observe what you're doing.
I got to practice that. It's sort of
And I'm going to invite you to open the center of your being. Like a flower petal. The center of the source of your life, the source of all life. The spring of life within you. You're actually one with all of your neighbors. You're going through the same training to experience the same softening through your being, the same opening. Allow yourself to scan through your body, everywhere where there's moving and holding up tightly. And just hold yourself there until it gives. Just releases. Scan through the whole body, just take your own time. It's just easy to let go of whatever is there. You just drop it. And so expanding and contracting with your breath. Just loosen up. I invite you to come back to the center of your being, the center of your heart. Feel the spring inside at the center of your chest. Just bring all of this attention to one tiny point, the jewel at the center of the eye of the lotus. You can feel tiny little spring. As you place your attention upon it, it becomes like a fire that glows. And you can trust that fire. Just one moment for you. All the thoughts are gone. The rest will come back. Just for this moment, just be here. When you're ready, just wiggle your toes just a bit. Move your fingers just a bit. And then you can open your eyes whenever you're comfortable. May the peace be with you. And just have a great day. Thank you.